All right, so we'll kick it off to introductions here. Welcome to the Inspiring Philosophy Discord channel. Today we're going to be having a debate against Juan or modern atheism and external on the problem of evil. Um, so we'll kick it off with external and his 2-minute introduction.
Yeah, I'm external. I run the ImagoLogos YouTube channel, and this debate I should probably explain. Basically, I did a debate on the problem of evil a year ago, and Modern saw it, and so he wanted to debate me on the same topic. And the opening I'm going to be giving tonight is going to be the same as a YouTube video I did a while ago called "The Problem of Evil Debunked: A New Solution." You may also know me because I'm somewhat active on here. So obviously I'm like Pure's in the chat. He knows me. He's like my son and everything. So y'all probably know me. All right, yeah, I'll give the rest of my time for the introduction to Modern.
All right, and we'll kick it over to modern.
So this time, okay. Okay, so first of all, I would like to say thank you to External for agreeing to have this conversation. And thanks to IP for agreeing to host the debate. And also to you guys thank you for having me here. I'm a little bit active. Some of you may know me, may have talked a little bit. Oh, I have a small YouTube channel. It's called Modern Atheism. So you want to see IP getting debunked? Check it out. I mean, just kidding. It's just some 80s stuff. Yeah, I think that's all.
All right. Before we get into the debate, I want to do some quick housekeeping items real quick. We are looking as a Discord channel to do more debates. So
that's
if
all
you
with the introduction.
Oh, okay. We are looking to keep up with more debates. So if you are interested in doing a debate and you have another interlocutor that is interested in doing a debate, please reach out to me and we can get something set up. After that, though, we should be good to kick it off. So I will give the format for the debate. We will open up with 10-minute opening statements, and then it will kick off to a 60-minute of open discussion. And then after that, we will have a Q&A session. For the Q&A session, I will give how that will work once we get to that point. But it will be you requesting up, and then I'll bring one person in on a time. I'll go over that again in a couple rules for the open discussion, but we should be good to go. I'll kick it over to External for his opening statement.
Actually, can I get permissions to share my screen for my opening? Because I don't have permissions, I think.
Yeah, let me
Never mind.
do that.
Okay, I think I got it.
Oh, okay.
Uh, all right, is it visible?
Yep.
Okay. So to start off, we're debating the problem of evil, and we can view the problem of evil as basically an argument which says that if God is all good, then he would wish to end all evil. And then from there, we would go over how God is omnipotent, and so therefore he could do it. And since evil exists, therefore God cannot be good and omnipotent at the same time without resulting in a contradiction. And so this would provide a defeater for theism. Or you can obviously put in a premise by premise argument like this. So, for example, modern atheism has said in the past that he can define the problem of evil as just one, Christianity posits God is benevolent. Two, benevolence implies that unnecessary suffering would not be allowed. Three, unnecessary suffering obtains. And then conclusion, there is no omnibenevolent being. Now, the way that I would go around this argument is that I would basically just deny the premise that being all good entails that he would wish to end all evil, such that the evil never existed at all. And for ease, I can just refer to this premise as the crucial premise. So if I refer to the crucial premise, I'm referring to this. And although not all problem of evil arguments are going to be the same as the one I gave above, all of them depend on the crucial premise in some way. And the reason why we can reject this crucial premise is because I think it depends on a moral framework, which is both contentious and unjustified. So, for starters, we can just define a moral framework as a set of beliefs about morality. And the problem of evil is going to require a moral framework because the entire argument rests upon the claim that God being good ultimately leads to him ending all evil. And this is a claim about what a moral person should do given their goodness, and thus requires beliefs about morality. So it requires a moral framework. This is important because the problem of evil does not work under all moral frameworks. And so what this means is that modern atheism has to present a defendable moral framework that works with the problem of evil and is epistemically justified. It's like, for example, right? Suppose for a second that this system of thought is true. That being one, God exists. Two, the only immoral things are four-sided triangles. Three, there are no four-sided triangles. So obviously this system isn't actually true, but just for hypothetical assume it is. So this is going to be a possible moral framework. But under this moral framework, the problem of evil doesn't work because obviously there is no evil under this scenario. And so because of that, the problem of evil fails. Likewise, suppose another moral framework where the propositions you accept are one, God exists. Two, an all good being doesn't have to prevent all evils in the case that all triangles are three-sided. Three, all triangles are three-sided. Four, evil happens. Now, under this moral framework, because we have a set of premises or a set of propositions which does not entail that God would end all evil, therefore the problem of evil does not work. So under this moral framework, the problem of evil fails. And obviously, I'm not going to say this moral framework specifically is true, but what this does show is that modern atheism needs to provide a moral framework which actually works with the problem of evil. However, even if he does provide such a moral framework, he needs to actually provide a moral framework which is justifiable. So, for example, if he says that an all good being would stop evil if three-sided triangles exist, that's going to be a claim that he needs to epistemically justify. And so, even if he can say the problem of evil works under this system, he would need to epistemically justify that moral paradigm. And I think that's going to be the important part because when he chooses which moral framework that works, he needs to either go with the problem of evil being an internal critique or an external critique. And depending on which he chooses, the issue can change. So if it's an internal critique, then he needs to basically show that something in Christianity entails that the problem of evil works, or that it entails the crucial premise. Because what it would mean is that in an internal critique, you would basically be taking upon your opponent's worldview and then showing an entailment from that. So if he wants to go with the internal critique, which most atheists do, and most atheists frame the problem of evil as an internal critique, he needs to demonstrate that something in Christianity entails that the problem of evil can work. And so that's going to place the burden of proof on him. Likewise, if he wants to do an external critique, then he's going to have to find a moral framework that is both epistemically justified and compatible with the problem of evil. And that's going to have to be a secular framework. That's important because whichever way he goes, the burden of proof is upon him, meaning that he has to justify it epistemically, which means I really do not have to do much epistemically for my argument to go through. Now, obviously, I explained what an internal critique is, and obviously the problem of evil is an internal critique. So from this so far, like what I've addressed is that since the problem of evil relies upon the crucial premise, and the crucial premise relies upon a moral framework, and that moral framework can either be situated as something internal or external to Christianity, we can conclude that since the problem of evil is an internal critique, and that moral framework is going to be internal, that if the Christian moral framework denies that an all good being would stop all evil, that being it denies the crucial premise, then it follows that the problem of evil fails. And we can just obviously see that the Christian worldview denies that the crucial premise is true. So obviously, for example, we would affirm that God is all good. But then when we get to biblical passages about whether or not, like, for example, God should stop all evil instantly such that it never exists, this problem of evil is addressed, and it's directly stated that the crucial premise is false. And so from this, we can infer that, the biblical texts, which are going to be the source for our knowledge about what Christian theism states, and thus our knowledge for about what is internal to the Christian paradigm, is going to basically tell us that, hey, the crucial premise isn't justified. And likewise, you see this in Matthew as well, not just the Old Testament. Now, this is going to be important because, as I've stated before, if the problem of evil depends upon the crucial premise, and the crucial premise needs to be dependent upon Christianity justifying it, then it follows that since Christianity does not justify it, the problem of evil fails. Now, let's just say that modern atheism wants to make it an external critique, right? So, for example, here he says that that the Christian standard of what goodness is divorced from the like typical definition, right? So he says it here as well. Well, first of all, to argue that the Christian moral framework is wrong in the way that he's doing it is just forfeiting it being an internal critique. And that's important because then he has to justify his own moral framework, which means that once again, the burden of proof is upon him. And for example, even if he gives a moral framework, if it's not justified, then really we can dismiss it for the reason that it's not justified. So, for example, if I say people who prefer pens to pencils are bad according to my beliefs, and Bob, if Bob is all good, he would prefer pens to pencils. That doesn't really matter in proving that Bob is not all good, because obviously that's just my subjective standard. And there's no real backing to that epistemically. So because there's no backing to it, I can just dismiss it as basically being subjective. And that's going to be important because if modern atheism wants to bring up a moral framework that he holds to, if he can't justify it, then there's no way that he can actually use it as a way to help prove the problem of evil goes through. So another thing is that modern atheism talks about how we're divorcing the word benevolent from how it's typically used. I would disagree because I think benevolence refers to something being all good. So if God is all good in our paradigm, then obviously there's no issue with us using the term benevolent. Furthermore, we would have to discern what benevolence means typically. And I think the way we would, determine what certain concepts refer to is we would begin by looking at particulars and then abstracting to the universal. So, for example, right, if you want to know what the concept water refers to, you would look at particular bodies of water and then see what properties individuate that water from other types of things, such as rocks or trees. You wouldn't just discern it by looking at the colloquial understanding of the term. There's a distinction between how we understand a term and what the term actually refers to. So, for example, water refers to H2O, but the standard understanding of water in ancient Greece was that it was an element. So, the term was commonly understood as an element, even though the actual referent of that term wasn't an element, showing that the common definition doesn't actually correspond to what the term actually refers to. And that's going to be important because if we're going to try to discern the meaning of benevolent or omnibenevolent, we would have to abstract from examples of things that are benevolent or omnibenevolent. So if you want to abstract to what a omnibenevolent thing would look like, you would have to have an example of something that is omnibenevolent, but that would require theism. So I don't think you can really get off the ground what the classical meaning or typical meaning of omnibenevolent is. I think I'll concede my time. I think I've said what I need to.
Okay. All right. We will now click it over to Modern Atheism for his 10-minute opening statement. All right. Do you have any presentation to share?
Oh no, I had just what I'm going to say.
Okay. All right. And then I'll kick it over to you, and your time will start now.
Okay, so I think to begin with, it's important to make a distinction between the logical problem of evil and the probabilistic problem of evil, which is a more modest argument, and just basically it attempts to say that suffering is unexpected under the hypothesis of theism. That suffering is not that unexpected under the hypothesis of atheism. So, in general terms, the existence of suffering is more likely. It makes things more unlikely. And so I want to start with a story. And I saw this in Facebook, and it's one of those videos that, one of those video ads that asks for money. And I apologize beforehand if this is like shocking or sensitive to someone. I'm gonna try to not make it super horrible, but it was a video of a little girl who was born with some kind of genetic disease, and she had it was a baby girl, like 2 or 3 years old. She had like blisters all over the body, and they were like really, really bad. They had to change the bandage each day, and they had to treat her treatment cost a lot of money. It was very hard to watch. The sad part is that they are telling us about how she lives with so much pain. She's constantly in pain, and you can see her. She's scratching her she scratches constantly. Like, it's really sad because you can tell she lives in a constant state of discomfort, right? If you imagine how a baby or a normal toddler lives, like they wake up, they eat something, they play with toys, right? But that girl, life wasn't like that, right? Life was a constant state of constant pain, constant discomfort, right? Constant problems. And she's gonna wake up to that tomorrow, and the entire day will be like that, and the day after as well. And she's probably not going to make it, right? She's gonna be a very hard life. So, and what you have to ask yourself is like, wouldn't God just make the human body in such a way, like the DNA, that at least this wouldn't happen, like to this degree, this wouldn't happen, right? And you have to ask yourself, like, why did God want like this specific kind of things, right? So that's something called the evidential problem of evil, or somebody, again, people will say, oh, that's just an appeal to emotion or the emotional aspect of evil. But I think this has some, at least rhetorically, right? There is some persuasive force there. Okay, so what is the logical, what the issue with God? The issue is very simple. The idea is that God is posited to be a benevolent being, a maximally benevolent and maximally loving being. And well, from that, I think the critique is straightforward, right? To say, okay, a benevolent being wouldn't want to cause suffering, right? One could argue, well, he will allow suffering, but I think he wouldn't want to. I think in the case, for example, in the case of genetic diseases, it's not just allowing for suffering, that he's actively causing suffering. And yeah, I think for that reason, I think the argument is more persuasive as the problem of suffering instead of the problem of evil. Because evil sounds like something that humans choose to do, and we can talk about that later. So I think you most of you have already heard the logical argument, like the syllogism, like, oh, if God is omnipotent, he's able to stop evil. If God is omniscient, he knows about evil, right? There are some weird people that posit an limited God, such as he's not able to stop evil. But I think I think the external doesn't have that position. That's a minority position. Most Christians, for most of these debates, the crucial premise is an omnibenevolent being. Will he desire to stop all evil? Or I would say at least minimize suffering. And again, I think from the definition of benevolent, I think the answer is straightforward. I think the answer is yes. So by looking at the world, one will say, yeah, I think then it's not the case that there is an only benevolent, maximally loving deity. With dominance over all of creation, right? Who set up this state of affairs, right? That's what I would say. Yeah, okay. External also brought some of the things I said earlier, and yeah, like he said, this all began because we were talking about a debate he had, and I hope this debate is just not based around the definition of benevolent, whether it's valid for Christianity to define benevolent in such a way that I think it's like ultimately I don't know what he's going to say. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's like they say, okay, the word good, when we say God is good, it's just the good is like what his own nature says or something like that. It's something that sounds a bit weird to me, but I don't know. I think he also had another debate with some orbital guy, and when he also brought up theodicies, and I think this is an important aspect of the debate, and I don't want to tell him how to make this debate. It's up to him, but I would also find it interesting to discuss the issue of theodicies. I mean, does he think that we don't really need one? Because he didn't use one. He didn't use any of them in his opening, which is a bit strange, right, for an opening on the problem of evil. I think the vast majority of people appeal to some theodicy. I think those would be interesting to discuss that, but we obviously I want to discuss the main issue, which is the conversation we had about what I was saying is that the way you define benevolence is everyone understands something, this to mean something, right? And you cannot say, oh, Christianity defines benevolence in a way that is completely different from the normal way people understand the word, right? If a normal definition of benevolence, the way the normal language is used, it implies that this being wouldn't cause or allow suffering, then this is the definition we should use. And this is the last point. Now he's saying that this is an internal critique, or okay, what if I say that it is not an internal critique of Christianity, because then we will have to look at the verses, which verse in particular says that God is all good. What does that word mean in this context? It will get very complex. I will just say it's an internal critique of classical theism, because in classical theism, in general, God is defined as a maximally benevolent, all loving, and all of that. So from the word, and in that word is not linked to any particular Bible verse or any particular theological context, what the word should say. So it's just the basic definition of benevolent or loving. What does that entail? And I think it's straightforward to say that entails that you will not cause other beings to suffer for no good reason, right? And this is the key premise, because now with the way theists normally challenge this is, okay, God has a good reason, and this particular theory or this other reason, right? And then we go to theodicies, but I don't know if he's going to appeal to that, or so. Yeah, I think I will just see what he says, right? That's all.
Sorry, I was hardware muted. All right, so I have my timer set up here. We're going to kick it over to 60 minutes of open discussion. For the open discussion, I'm going to try to be as hands-off as possible. If I see the topics getting a little bit off track, I might steer it back onto the right plane. But other than that, you guys should be free to go at it. I think, I'm not sure how you guys want to do the opening discussion, if you just want to start talking or have a little bit more structure to it.
Yeah, it's fine for me. We can just
Okay.
go to open discussion.
Yeah, that works.
All right. And I'll start the timer now.
Okay.
Okay. Modern, do you want to kick off the discussion, or should I do it?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me just ask you something. Now we can obviously talk about that issue, very interesting philosophical issue of the definition of benevolence and how does that work in an internal critique. But let me ask you this: don't you think that the problem of evil needs a theodicy? Don't you think it really require a theodicy to truly respond to that?
If you look at my solution, you could maybe call it like a theodicy, because it's like a solution to the problem of evil. If you think that any solution to the problem of evil is a theodicy, then I guess you would need a theodicy in that sense. But if by theodicy you mean that like I need a causal account as to like, or like the reasons why God doesn't prevent evil, then I don't think you need a theodicy in that sense to solve the problem of evil, because I don't think that you need necessarily like a metaphysical account or like a causal principle to like explain why God does or does not do things. And like even in normal life, for example, if you were to like say, for example, look up to the sky and see that the sky is blue, you could know that the sky is blue without knowing like the causal or like metaphysical reasons behind it. And so likewise, I can say that God has like reasons for preventing or for not preventing evil or something akin to that without actually having like a in-depth explanation. Just like how like if the sky is blue, I don't have to know that the reason why it's blue is because photons are scattered in a certain way, causing me to see blue. Like that's not necessary for me to know just the fact that it is blue. So I think there's a difference between like giving a causal account and like just having knowledge of something.
Right. So here's the issue. I think, okay, if we know 100% that God exists, right? If we are sure about this, if it's established, then it follows maybe, okay, he must have a reason for allowing evil. I will agree to that. I will agree to that. But if the issue is a different, if it's a different issue. Oh,
You
hello?
cut out first.
Oh, I cut off first.
Yeah, you
I
cut
don't.
out for a second.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Did you hear what I say? I mean, if we
Um,
know. Angelo?
Repeat what you said after if we know that God exists for 100%.
Okay, yeah. If we know for sure that a God exists, right? Then it follows, right? He must have a reason for allowing evil, right? That's true. But if if it's the case, oh oh my God, oh my God, you getting me? Audio technical issues today. That's so sad.
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay. That's great. I saw you made okay. So, but if it's the case, in this case, we are discussing whether he exists or not. So, you're like, okay, we don't know if God exists or not. We are going to evaluate that. We're going to look. We are going to look. Okay, suffering exists in the world. Now, you have two possibilities. One, is it because God, the traditional God, doesn't exist, and that's why accounts for suffering? Or number two, is it because God does exist and he has a reason, he has a good reason to allow this, right? To cause this.
Well, if we're evaluating the hypothesis of like we're going to be evaluating the hypothesis of Christianity, right? Or like,
Uh,
because I know you said something. I know you said that like you would want to say it's an internal critique of classical theism, but the issue is that I would just ask classical theism and what moral framework, right? So if we're going to be evaluating a hypothesis and seeing whether like or not evil is expected under that hypothesis, we would have to know what type of moral framework that hypothesis takes. So like if you want to say that like you're trying to compare what is more expected under theism versus atheism, I need to know what moral framework you're using to evaluate each.
I think if we are going to evaluate that, we will have to look, okay, what are the hypothetical attributes of this God? We'll have to start with that because we don't know what his attributes are. We cannot predict is he going to allow suffering or not. So we will look, okay, a God with the attribute of benevolence. And we just ask, okay, from the way the word benevolence is used in everyday normal language, does benevolence imply that you're going to cause suffering, right? Extreme suffering, for example. I think the answer is no. And by the way, I have something to say about this moral framework thing, okay? Your opening kind of implies that I will have to demonstrate or justify my moral framework to later appeal to that moral framework and say, okay, suffering is bad. But I'm not sure I agree, even if two of us have different moral frameworks. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree like is divorce wrong or anything. As long as we both agree that a 3-year-old baby suffering all day is a bad thing, right? And I think this is not a quirk. I think this is something that is going to be agreed on by the vast majority of different moral frameworks. I think as long as we agree to that, then I can make the argument for suffering. We don't have to have a more the same. We have to agree. We don't have to have the same moral framework. So I don't have to put my particular moral framework.
Well, the issue is that so with you, if you could say that, right, and I can agree, but the question is whether or not you're justified. Because if you're going to be making an argument, then the premises of that argument have to actually be justified. So like whenever we agree on something, right, I can say we agree on that fact, but that doesn't make your belief in that actually like justified. So when, for example, right, you're talking about well, hold on, you're saying it's an internal critique, right?
Let's say yes. I think yes. Okay, let's say yes. I mean, like, yeah.
Okay, when you say it's an internal critique of classical theism, doesn't that mean you have to take on the classical theist moral view?
I mean, but the way, yeah, I saw what you did in the debate with that atheist guy, and it's like, if you have to, it was something like, okay, if you're making an internal critique, you have to assume that the worldview is true. But because it's true, then your argument is false. I think you did something like that. I just have to, I mean, the argument is very straightforward. Classical team says God is benevolent, right? Does that imply that he's going to cause a state of such severe suffering like this genetic disease? I think the answer is no. So I think you will need a reason for that. I know that. So I think they have to go and say, they do just leave it like that. They have to go and say, okay, he got certain reasons for that, right? I think you have to do that, but you haven't
Well,
agreed to that.
Okay, here's the issue though. When you're saying that benevolence implies certain things, right? If you're doing that internally to like a Christian paradigm, then you're going to be assuming our morals. And well, first of all, I would also say that like you're kind of also strawmanning how we view God's like causation in the world, because we wouldn't say that God is the cause of that person having the disease. We can say that like God isn't directly stopping that person from having the disease, but that's going to be different from saying that God is directly the cause. So I would say it's more in line with saying God doesn't directly stop it. It's just that what's it called? If you're assuming our framework, then you would have to concede that God not stopping that person from having that disease isn't actually immoral, because in our framework, there's nothing that causes it to be immoral for God not to do that.
Yeah, here is where I have some issues, and this will get us to, okay, well, so in your framework, I think it will be immoral to to cause suffering like that to a human being. I think it will be obvious. I think it will, for example, I think we both agree it will be immoral for a person to do it, right? And then you are telling me, but our framework says that God cannot be immoral. You haven't really explained that. Our framework says that God cannot be immoral, like no matter what he does, right? Even if he's torturing people for fun and for no greater good, and he does it forever. Like some people, I don't know if this is your view, but some people have this view, like God cannot be bad, morally bad by definition. I'm like, dude, this is like missing the point somehow. The point is that you're saying that God is benevolent, and this word implies something. When you say God is benevolent, this implies something. The word means something for according to the way normal language is used, right? And what it implies, it usually implies that it wouldn't cause suffering. Or by the way, about causing or allowing, no, I cannot grant you that God allows these genetic diseases instead of causing them. I think because he set up our DNA and the way the human body works, and he created viruses and bacteria, I think he will be directly causing those things.
Well, there's a difference between having the human body be susceptible to those things and God directly causing it to be that way. Like, for example, right, if I were to cause something into existence and it has the possibility or like susceptibility to go bad, right? That doesn't mean I'm causing it insofar as it's bad. So like with us in our worldview, we would say that God created like for example Adam and Eve, and they wouldn't succumb to those types of issues. But then once they got kicked out of the garden, they would no longer have the immortality that they had in the garden.
Right. Okay, what I would say to that is that no, God is not just that something. This doesn't really work like in the real world. It's like they had some immortality and they wore off, and then we get sick. No, God has to actively create viruses. God has to actively create bacteria. God has to actively program these diseases
Well,
in the
I'm
DNA.
not a well, I'm not a young Earth creationist, so I would hold to evolution. So I wouldn't say that God actively creates those things in the way that you would say, or in the way that you're implying.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, but he actually designed the system so that it would work in this way. And no, I don't see. By the way, you say that there is a difference between having a body with the possibility that it will go bad. I mean, I think if you do it on purpose, right? I'm gonna put on purpose the possibility of this body going bad when it didn't have to have that possibility. I think that this is also the same, like morally blameworthy, also in a sense. I think God will have to do that.
Well, I mean, when you say that they wouldn't have to have a body that's like that, like, how are you exactly justifying? Like, I'm confused, kind of where you're going with that. Like, how are you justifying that claim?
Oh, justify what exactly? What do you mean by that exactly?
Because you're saying that he wouldn't like have to do a body, or like that there's no reason for him to design humans to have a body in that way. Like if this is an internal critique and you're going to be taking upon our like framework, right?
Yeah.
Then obviously we would think that God has some reasons for designing us with like a physical appearance rather than just being like souls. So
No,
when
yeah.
you say that there's no reason, to me that seems kind of question begging.
No, yeah. I agree. He will design a body. A body is okay, but why a body that can get genetic mistakes, right? Why design the mechanism, the genetic copying mechanism, in a way that mistakes are possible? I think it is uncontroversial to say that God could have made it so that these kind of mistakes didn't happen in the genetic code. If he had wanted to, he could have made the genetic code like that, and he could have like. I know some Christians say that. I know exactly what you're saying, because you see on one hand you point to evolution, And then on the other hand, you say, okay, Adam and Eve had a perfect body, and after the sin is why it went imperfect. But I'm not sure, like, how do you harmonize those two views? I don't know.
Well, firstly, I would say that like when you're asking for like, are you asking me for what the reason is specifically, or are you
Yeah.
asking me for the justification I have for believing there is a reason? Because I think
No, no,
that's
no.
like, I think those are two different questions.
Yeah. I think my question is, I mean, do you think you need to appeal to a theory, or do you think it's enough to say God may have a reason that we don't know about it, right? That because
Yeah,
that's
I'm
the
fine with like for example with the whole like bodies thing. Like I don't know the exact reason as to why God designed this or that thing in the particular way it exists. I wouldn't claim to have knowledge on that, but that's not the same thing as saying that the reason there's no like reason behind it. And this is important because once again, if you're taking upon our framework to do an internal critique, then you're gonna have to basically concede that God has a reason, even if that reason isn't known.
all right, but that's saying that's same that came. That's what I say that you did in the other debate. Then I will never be able. Nobody will never be able to make an internal critique in that way because obviously your worldview entails that your worldview is true, right? I mean, you like you say, oh, if you have,
Well, I
yeah,
think hold on, I think that's just an issue with how the problem of evil works at a fundamental level. Because like, yeah, I can agree that just means that the problem of evil doesn't work as like an internal critique and it can never work. But I mean, I don't really have an issue with like saying that the problem of evil just doesn't work as an internal critique. I mean, that's kind of the point of my presentation that whichever route you go, and especially if you go the internal critique route, the problem of evil just can't get off the ground.
okay, but why is that? Okay, let me see. You seem to me say this is what you seem to be saying. Okay, an internal critique is that you first agree to the worldview, right? And because you agree to a worldview, then the worldview is true. And because it's true, then the internal critique must fail, right? I mean, nobody will be ever able to make an internal critique.
Well,
But
no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
saying that,
An internal critique is when you look at the entailments of like a view. So you would take on like it's like every worldview is going to be like a set of propositions, right? So if you have propositions like A, B, and C, right? So an internal critique would be saying, here's these propositions A, B, and C. Let's assume these propositions are true. Can we derive a contradiction, right?
yeah,
So
right.
for example, right, let's say with I don't know, like let's say with P and not P. Let's say some worldview has those two propositions. If you were to do an internal critique, then I would say, hey, this worldview has P and not P. So therefore, because of the law of non-contradiction is true, and since you cannot have P and not P, therefore this worldview fails as like an and then that would be like an example of a successful internal critique.
Right. So P will be okay. You want to say something else?
I can like give another example. I mean, like one example that you might see with that like people use in like apologetics would be like the Islamic dilemma. Like they'll say here Islam affirms these propositions, and these propositions are going to entail some internal inconsistency, and so that's what they're going to use as like an internal critique. So if you're going to say that like my view of what an internal critique entails that like the problem of evil can't work as an internal critique, then like that, I mean I agree, but I don't see how that would extend to other internal critiques because I think I think the other internal critiques can work fine as long as they're done properly.
Sure. Okay, let me give an example on that, maybe to see if we're on the same page. Like I see that IP, something that he brings example of is the marriage of Muhammad to Aisha. And what if an Muslim said, okay, you are trying to make an internal critique, but Islam entails that the marriage was morally okay somehow, even if we don't see how, and therefore the internal critique completely fails, and there is no internal limit. That's what you're doing here, right? You're not really explaining how it is morally fine, but you're just saying, okay, because Christianity entails, the truth of Christianity entails that it has to be morally fine, and that's it. The internal critique is not possible.
Well, the issue I have is that I don't think the Aisha argument is necessarily an internal critique, because the way that the Aisha
No.
argument is justified is you're going to say, here's like a bunch of studies that shows child marriage is harmful, right? So this is just going to be something that like we can just establish empirically, for example. So, you know,
Okay,
then
maybe that was a bad example. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that
I
was
mean,
not an internal critique. Maybe that's
even
my
if it
mistake.
is an internal critique, like for example, what you can do is say that here Islam is gonna like take you to this meta-ethical view, and maybe this meta-ethical, like, normative view is going to entail that we can use empirical research to better the world or something like that, right? But then at the same time, it promotes this thing which has been shown to be empirically negative. Like, so you can frame it as an internal critique that way as well. And
That's
as long
fine.
as you could justify the premises from inside the belief, then it works.
Yeah. So okay, I don't want to go around in circles. So maybe, don't what is the what does Christianity say about what benevolence means, and like does Christianity explain why does God allow suffering and evil? What Christianity is like a response to that?
So, firstly, I would say that Christianity just defines like benevolent or like omnibenevolent as just being all good. So when we say God is omnibenevolent, we're just saying God is all good.
What
And
does
depending, huh?
what does good mean? If I'm sorry for interrupting, and what does good mean?
So there's two definitions I could take for this debate. So the first one would be like a natural law view where goodness and being are convertible. So, like for example, right, you can say a knife is good because the knife is adhering to its nature. And so likewise, because God is identical to its nature, it's going to be, obviously adhering the most to its nature, and thus God will be all good. So that's how like an Aristotelian would view
Okay, but
the
hold on.
word good and how that applies to God.
Okay, but did that come from Christianity, or was that like your philosophical, development later on?
It depends on what you constitute as the sources for Christian revelation. Because obviously, if you go by the biblical text, then we could like go into examples where, like, for example, Paul like talks like cites Aristotle, and I can maybe argue from that. But
Okay.
either way, though, right? If we take church tradition as like a source of like doctrine, for example, which even someone who affirms sola scriptura can say that tradition can lead you to truth. We can say that, hey, this is like the traditional view of theism that was passed down like throughout the church, and so that justifies our belief in it.
Okay. Here's my issue with that. I talk about this with Lamb on my or talk on meta ethics. I don't think that's the definition of the word good at all. All right. When you say morally good, that's nowhere near. Okay, there's nowhere near nobody who thinks the word good is the same as somehow being right. That will be good is something trivial. Okay, a knife is good because it's good. The knife is consistent with its own nature. Okay, then what could possibly be bad? I mean, could a goal be bad? No, the gun is consistent with its own nature. It's an atomic explosion bad. Oh no, because that was consistent with its own nature.
Well,
Okay,
hold on.
okay.
The thing is with God, right? We're gonna say he's identical to his nature specifically, right? And with the knife thing, right? Um, wouldn't it be intuitive that a knife being good is it adhering to its nature? Because, like, for example, right, the whole nature of a knife, or like the whole point of a knife, is that it cuts things. So if a knife cuts things well, it's adhering to its nature well, and that's why we say the knife is good.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't. So I mean, if anything, I would
Mm.
say that's like the intuitive definition of good,
No,
that
I think,
it's adhering to like its purpose or design or nature.
but so, I mean, a broken knife adheres to its nature of being a broken knife, right? But so it can never be bad. So what I think, for example, when people say guns are bad, right? What they mean is they cause bad things. So a knife, and again, it depends on context. A knife can be good or bad, right? A knife is good in the sense that it works properly. So it does what is, as an instrument, it does what it's supposed to
Mhm.
do. But a knife is not morally good. I don't think the word good here, it refers to morally good and applies only to agents.
Okay, okay.
Okay. It is
Well,
yeah,
oh, do you
okay.
have something? Okay, I thought you were finished with the.
No. I just want to say very quickly, the word
Okay.
morally is the word morally good, not the word good in general. Like when I say this pen is good, it means that the pen work. But when I say this person is good, it's different. So it's not the same word. I think morally good is to mean something else when applied to an agent, right? That's what I would say.
Okay, so I'm actually glad that you kind of brought up the example of the bad knife, right? Because let's say you're evaluating whether or not the knife is good, right? You can say the knife, like let's say you have a broken knife, you can say this knife is bad insofar as it is a knife, but the knife may be good insofar as it is a broken knife. So if you're considering it insofar as it is a broken knife, then a broken knife is going to be good at being a broken knife, obviously, but it's not going to be good at being just a regular knife. And another thing is that, like, obviously for us, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's like a broken knife nature, but I think that's going to get us more into like metaphysics rather than ethics, which I don't know if that's like this is like the proper place to get into. But to your second point, right? The issue is that I don't really like I don't see a need to distinguish between these two types of goods though. Like if I'm saying a person is good and a knife is good, then in both cases I'd be fine with just saying that this person is, you know, adhering to their proper purpose or like adhering to their nature. So in both cases I think that the definition of good would like work the same.
I disagree with that. So I mean, I think the word morally good entails something different than when you use applied to objects. I don't think. I mean, we got the language is like that, right? So we got the same word, but I don't think it really the same word. The same it entails implies the same thing. So let me ask you this. Here my problem with this. So you're telling me that when the Bible, when Christianity says God is benevolent, the only thing that this proposition is implying is that God is consistent with his own nature, and that's it. That's what it implies. But I think that's obviously not the case. I think it implies something like what the normal person would understand. It implies that God is kind, that God is fair, that God is going to do good things. I think benevolent implies that, not that okay, God is consistent with his own nature, because that's like, you know.
Well, I would say that God being benevolent does imply that because things like love, justice are his nature. So God being consistent or identified with his nature would be the same thing as him being like loving and kind and so forth.
Right. But
But
if that's the
but
case,
here's the thing. I think okay, I think one other thing that we should go back to though is we seem to be focused on this sort of idea of what is the standard meaning of terms. But then I'm kind of curious, right? I can like share my screen again if needed, but when I went over the whole part about like abstraction of concepts where we go from particular instances to talking about the like universal concept itself, do you like have a disagreement there? Because if you were to use that method, then I think you could derive something like natural law theory somewhat easily, which would be in favor of me.
right, I do. I think I do have some issues with what you say. For example, you say that water, our colloquial definition of water, it's H2O, and I think that's not our colloquial definition of water. I think the colloquial
No, no, no,
definition,
no.
our colloquial,
I can hold on. Here. I'll put it back up so you can see what specifically I'm talking about. All right, there you go.
I see it too small. Do I have to wait? Okay, I
Oh.
see it big now. Okay, okay. So, say that
Mhm.
we are referring for the. Okay, I have to.
Yeah,
Uh,
because my point was that the water refers to H2O, right? But
yeah,
if you were to go to like ancient Greece, the standard understanding of that
yeah,
term would just
yeah.
be that term refers to an element. So the understanding of the term is different from like what it actually refers to. So like
Hmm.
likewise, if you want to talk about like benevolence, you're gonna have to distinguish between what the term refers to and like what people typically understand that term to refer to. Because the
Yeah,
way that we would understand a concept like benevolence, I think, would be based off of like a very similar method to how we would understand like what water is. You would have to go from particular bodies of water to like the definition of water. So likewise, I think you would have to go to like particular examples of like what is ethical or like what constitutes goodness, and then from there get to a definition, not just like look at like various definitions of good and see which definition is the most common.
yeah. So let me see. I think the colloquial definition of water. I think we and the Greek had the same definition. Water is this liquid that is drinkable and it's something you find in river and the rain. I think that's the colloquial definition. I think H2O. I think that's not the colloquial definition really. I don't think it's I think that's the scientific definition, not the colloquial definition. But
Yeah.
this is okay. Okay.
Oh no, I was just agreeing that it's not the colloquial definition.
Okay. But let me tell you what I think is an important point you make. Okay, you say that mean what does it mean? What are you conveying when let's say within Christianity? What are we conveying when we say God is benevolent? According to you, what that says is that God is according to His own nature, and I'm like, okay, what does that imply? Things like fairness or kindness, and you say, okay, because this is also part of His own nature, right? But look, then how do? Here's my thing, my question: why does kindness or justice, why are these things part of God's nature? And your answer better not be because they are good, right? Because that will be like like redundancy, right? And what I think is the issue, I think is the key issue. If we're going to say, to define goodness as just being consistent with its own nature, then to say that God is good is that makes the statement a meaningless tautology. What do I mean when I say God is good? That word there is not giving any information, it's not telling you anything. For example, I say God is omnipotent, it means he can do whatever he wants. But if I say he's good, it's just that he's own, according to his own nature. It doesn't tell me that he's going to be kind or just. You have to, I mean, you get my point?
So I think there's like two questions there. The first one is like, why are things like love, justice, so forth, like good in God's essence? And the second one was like it's a tautology when you say God is good, under my view, right?
Yeah.
Did you say yes? I didn't hear you.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. So for the first question, I think we can distinguish like how that question is interpreted, because first, if you're asking like how are love, justice, and so forth like in God's essence, firstly, you can basically I think one way you could interpret that is you're asking me, hey, what's the justification in terms of like my epistemology for believing that God is just, or God is love, or that love is identical to his essence, and so forth, right? The justification for that would obviously go back to divine revelation, where we could just point to like verses where it says that God is love. Now, if you're asking me like, what grounds God being loving, or like what grounds God being just in like an ontological sense, I wouldn't say it's grounded in anything else. So it would be fundamental. So for us, God being just or God being loving is going to be something that's necessary and is ungrounded. And for the second question, when you say that it's a tautology and therefore it's meaningless, I don't think tautologies are meaningless because, like, for example, right? Suppose I were to say the person on the left is modern atheism. That's going to be an identity statement, right? But in that statement, it seems that that's also a tautology by the standard that you're using to say that God is good is a tautology. So if you want to say that God is good is meaningless because it's just an identity statement, then it seems to me that me saying that the person on the right to me is modern atheism is also meaningless. But I think just intuitively, that's clearly not meaningless.
I mean, if someone asks you, if you say the person in the left is modern atheism, and then if someone asks you, okay, and who is modern atheism, and if your answer is, okay, it's the person that is on my left, then in a way, it's like you haven't really conveyed any information. In a way, this doesn't answer the question, right?
Well, I think it depends on what your knowledge of the person on the left was like, or well, technically you're on my right on my end. I don't know what it looks like for your end,
I'm
but
on my right.
yeah. So, let's say this person, whoever you're talking to, knows that there is someone on the right and they know certain characteristics, right? In which case, we could say that, since they know who the person on the right is, I don't have to give any further definition of who modern atheism is. I can just make the identity statement, and that's sufficient to like identify them. And then with God, because I've already defined goodness in such a way, and I've already explained in what way God is good, that being by being identical to his nature and being itself. Because, like, remember, if I'm going to be approaching this from the classical theist position, then I'm going to say that God is being itself, meaning that, like, God is just pure act. So, under my view, if I've defined goodness as that way already, then saying that God is good would be, like, perfectly intelligible in that way. It wouldn't just be a meaningless tautology.
I think it is. Let's see if we can find an example. And I was hoping maybe we could discuss theories if you want after this, but I don't. We will take it how you want. Let's say the statement, God is generous. Now let's try to see what it conveys. Now generosity, normally if I say external is generous, it means that this sentence conveying some information. He's telling me external likes to give me material things, right? Likes to give me gifts, for example. Let's just say for the sake of this is that this is the normal definition of generosity, that he will have a disposition to give me gifts. Now, when I say God is generous, I think what everybody is understanding is the same, is that God is going to have a disposition to give you gifts. I don't think they will see, okay, no, in Christianity, actually, generous is just part of God's nature. So the statement God is generous actually means God is consistent with his own nature. No, that's not what it means. The statement God is generous does mean that God is going to give me gifts according to proper use of language. So the same will be with benevolent and morally good.
Well, when it comes to generous, usually when like if we want to predicate something to God in that way, we would just say that it's predicated in virtue of like the effects that God has. So like in this case, we would say that God is generous because of the grace he provides because of his role as creator. Not necessarily like if you want to define generous as like someone who provides certain goods for like I guess you could say non-selfish reasons, then in that case, God satisfies that definition because, he provides grace and he provides creation to us. And also because of the incarnation.
Right. So God satisfies the definition, right? So again, that's I don't see what the issue is. So if you say God is benevolent, it's because that satisfies the definition of benevolence and the normal definition of benevolence, the way I see it.
Well, yeah, the normal definition of benevolence, in my opinion, would be like it would obviously depend on some moral framework, right? So if we're going by natural law theory, where something being good is just going to be in some way adherent to its nature, then the typical or like normal definition of what benevolence is just going to be that or omnibenevolence, I should say, is just going to be that it's identical to its nature or that it's pure being. So when I say God is pure being, and that's what it means for him to be omnibenevolent, I don't see how I've differed from what benevolence typically refers to.
Really, really, man. I'm like, don't you see how? Really, do you think if I say, okay, God is benevolent, I by that, imagine a person explain this to a child, for example. God is benevolent, and he's like, what does that mean? Okay, I mean God is identical with his own nature. Do you really think that's a good answer?
Like to a child, I think you would have to explain like what we mean by pure being first. But if you're just meaning in like in our metaphysics, then yeah, like you would have to obviously explain well, like before you even say God is benevolent, you're gonna have to explain what goodness is. So if our view of goodness is just that like its adherence to our nature, then obviously when we say omnibenevolent, then God is just adherent to his nature perfectly. So I mean, yeah, that's what it would mean.
I don't agree with that definition. I think it's like I was saying, it goes back to the very beginning. I think it's very divorced from what the normal world entails. And it's like if I have a bad, and if I have inherently bad nature, let's say God creates a being that is always evil, that wants to cause hurt others just for fun, right? But as long as this being adheres to his own nature, then that being is morally good in your worldview. And that's crazy, okay? If it's doing, it's hurting people, I think this is, no, sounds wrong to me.
Well, I mean, I would say that it's. Wait, hold on, can you repeat that actually? You kind of like cut out for like the last part.
Oh, yeah, no, it would be crazy to say that this a being that is evil, right? That wants to hurt other beings for fun. As long as this being adheres to its own nature, then it counts as being good under the Christian worldview. But maybe you would say that the word
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't
good
think that's
only
possible
words like
though.
that when applied to
Yeah, I,
God.
I don't think that scenario you're describing is possible for like something to have a nature where it wants to hurt people though. That's the thing. I don't think that scenario is possible. Because like when we refer to like nature, right, we're not referring to like a predicate in like a first order sense, but rather we're using the term nature in like an Aristotelian sense. We're not just referring to any predicate.
Yeah. Nature is like it's like the set of properties, the entire set of properties of a thing, right? That's its nature. That's right.
I wouldn't necessarily define nature as like just a set of properties. I would say it's more so like an intrinsic principle of motion.
I don't know what that means, to be honest. Like for me, okay, the word nature in philosophy, it simply answers the question of how a thing is. Okay, how is a thing, and what is its nature? Is the same question. That's what I was.
You can simplify it like that, but I think that how do I put it? Basically, if you want to like simplify it, you can say that in nature is just what a thing is. But I think the issue is just like for example, right, when you say something has a nature to do this or that, right? I don't think natures necessarily work where you can take any quality of a thing and say it's a nature, right? So there's no like such thing as like a modern atheism nature, for example, where like if modern atheism is good, it adheres to like modern atheism nature. Because I think that's like the kind of issue with where you're going.
Okay, okay. I don't know if we are going in circles here or something,
I
but
mean, if
I
you
don't know. This is boring for
if
the
you want to
audience, but
define, oh my bad.
no, it's fine. So I mean, when you think that, okay, I mean, for example, the revelation is telling us God is just. When you think that for this to make sense, the word just needs to be the same as what we understand what when we say that a person is just. I mean, if you say, no, actually in Christian philosophy, because of this super complicated philosophy, the word just for God, applied to God, only says that he's consistent with his own nature. That's what the word, and that's what Revelation was telling us when they said God is just. You mean, I mean, that sounds crazy to me. It doesn't make sense, really.
Well, first of all, under like natural law theory, right? You're going to be saying that when you say someone is just, that's going to involve them adhering to his nature. And so, like, a natural law theorist is going to say that goodness typically does refer to something adhering to its nature.
I don't see it this way. I think when I say
I
something
mean,
is just,
if you want to define, like, if you want to provide like a, I guess you could say, different ethical view, and then we can see how we do with that, that would work. Because like I'm fine with like for example, if you don't want to define goodness like in that way, then we can just define goodness by saying that like some agent is good only if it does actions that an agent ought to do, or like only actions that is moral to do. Like if you want to define it like that, I'd be fine with defining it like that just for conversation. If you like are stuck up on the Aristotelian stuff.
yeah, I don't know. It just feels to me like a colloquial definition of good, what a normal person understands by morally good or by suffering, will be sufficient, right? And I don't agree that being just is like adhering to your nature. That like really nobody, I will never buy that. If somebody said the definition of just, okay, is that it adheres to your nature? It's like what? No, the definition of just is that it gives to each as it deserves. That obviously conveys what the word means. Not what you say doesn't convey what the word means. So it's like you're using words in such a diverse way to what they actually mean in normal language.
Well, I mean, to be fair, once again, I feel like this just gets back into what I said about like how we abstract concepts. I mean, once again, I'm fine with just granting that we can take a like a different view of morals besides natural law theory, because I think that would just get to the same like that would get
Okay.
us to the same end that we would get if we went by natural law theory. It's like, well, let's just assume for argument that we're not going to go by natural law theory, and we're going to say that an agent is good insofar as it produces like good actions, for example, right?
Yeah.
So when we say God is good, then just the question becomes, what constitutes a good action, and how do you know what that is?
I don't. Okay, so let's agree. Maybe I think we have about 20 minutes, so maybe we can
Okay.
instead of going back in circles or this, we can maybe talk about a bit about theodicies, because in your video you also talk a bit about this. Maybe if you agree to that. So what are you okay? But what you just asked, how will I define good? I don't think I have to give you a complete definition of good. It's enough if we agree that suffering is bad. Okay, I need to define good. Let's just agree that suffering for no good reason is a bad thing. Can we agree on that? Or can we agree that the idea of children being born with a genetic disease, that if you cause that for no good reason, that this violates our moral intuitions or the moral intuitions of the modern world? Can we agree to that for the sake of the argument? Or maybe you see if maybe a theodicy would be important here.
I can agree that like suffering is a bad state. Yeah, I can agree that suffering itself is bad, but my contention is how are you going to be able to then use that to make a problem of evil critique if you don't have a justification for that? Because I can say that I have a justification for believing that suffering is bad, but I don't see how you would be able to have one.
If we both agree to that, then I don't see the need to justify it. Why would I bother justifying when we both agree to that? You know what I mean? If we both agree that it's bad, so why would I need to prove that it's bad? If we both agree to this, so for the sake of the argument, we can move on. I don't see the need to prove it when we just both
Okay,
agree
okay.
that it's bad.
If we're just gonna go on agreed terms, right? then let's just say that we both agree that suffering is bad. Okay. So how would you actually prove the crucial premise that I talked about? That being that benevolence or that being all good implies that God would end all suffering such that it didn't exist. Because like we don't agree on that. I obviously don't think that God being all good entails that God would eliminate all evil such that it didn't exist. So I think that even if you want to go with the argument that, hey, we agree on this part, I still think that leads to the conclusion that you still have a lot of work to do epistemically, because you still have to justify the crucial premise, even if you don't want to justify that suffering is bad in your worldview.
Right, right. So here is where the difference between the logical argument from evil and the probabilistic argument comes into play. If I'm going to logically justify, and if you ask me to logically prove a benevolent being is going to want to eliminate all evil, then maybe this is very hard to do. I agree. And I think the probabilistic way, what would you say? What Alex O'Connor says, for example, one would expect it to at least minimize or eliminate most of suffering, or to not one suffering. One would expect that. So that's a natural thing. It will be a very natural thing from a benevolent being to not cause suffering. That's like, I see it as a straightforward thing from the definition, and not something that I really have to prove.
Okay, if I can respond to that, I think there's two things that you're messing up on. First of all, I think that, like, first of all, when it comes to a probability based argument, if you want to run that type of argument, then whenever you look at like a probabilistic problem of evil, the way it works is that you first compare two hypotheses, right? So let's say you have Christian theism and then atheism, right? And then you see, what does Christian theism expect, and then what does atheism expect, right? Now,
Yeah.
my argument is basically that under a Christian theistic worldview, the probability that you would see suffering is actually going to be 100%. And this is even for suffering that seems unnecessary. And the reason for this is obviously we have one example of suffering, that would be the incarnation and atonement and the crucifixion, right? So under Christianity, the probability of suffering occurring is going to be one. But under atheism, I don't see any reason to see why there would be conscious agents that would suffer at all, let alone conscious agents, right? So I don't see how the probabilistic argument can work here, because under Christianity, you're going to have figures such as Job or Jesus and so forth in the biblical text, where the biblical text directly states that there's going to be suffering within the world, right? So that means that there's going to be 100% probability that suffering exists if Christianity is true, meaning that suffering is expected at a probability of one if Christianity is true. So I don't think that like the probabilistic argument really helps here.
Okay. Your first question is suffering predicted by atheism. I think that one is easy. One could say that evolution wants conscious agents, conscious animals to avoid certain things, like for example, destroying the bodies, and that's why it's going to send them some signal they find displeasure, so that they will avoid this behavior. For example, that will be a way to explain why is it expected. Okay, what you're saying is that, okay, the Bible says Job acknowledges that suffering exists, right? And apparently that's the same as, it means that Christianity predicts suffering. No, what I'm saying is that if you're going to be consistent, the hypothetical positing of maximally benevolent being does not predict suffering. You tell me, no, but Christianity predicted suffering anyway. I will simply tell you, yeah, because they were being inconsistent. The people who wrote the Bible, that shows they weren't thinking about this rationally, right? They were
Well,
they were
hold
just
on, hold on.
right?
Just a question. So you're saying they were being inconsistent, right?
I mean, they were not that they were being inconsistent, it's that they believed in God despite the problem of evil, despite not having a good answer to that, is what I would say. I mean, not that they're
Well,
necessarily being
hold on.
inconsistent.
Yeah, but you're saying that they're being inconsistent, but doesn't that just go back to the logical problem of evil, which is one of my points, that the probabilistic argument just gets you back to the logical one? Because you're saying that benevolence implies that like God would end all evil, but that just gets us back to the original point, which means that the probabilistic argument just circles back to the logical one.
No, I think inconsistent and completely contradictory, I think it's not the same, right? Because you could, okay, at least I agree logically. I agree one could believe, for example, why do people like the writer of Job believes that God may have a reason or for allowing suffering. And that's what I wanted to discuss. I mean, it's sad that we didn't get to discuss any theodicy, but one could say that logically it works, so it's fine. I don't think the logical problem, the argument from evil, but like probabilistically, if we think, is it likely a good God likely to allow this degree of suffering we find in the world? Then I think no. And if you tell me, but the Bible believes God does allow that, I will tell you, no, but he hasn't, he just believes that despite the problem of evil, but that's not the same as
Yeah, but
solving the problem of evil.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When we're doing a probabilistic, version of this, then the issue is going to be that you have to look at what's expected given the worldview. So, in order to know what's expected given the worldview, you have to actually look at what the biblical text says. So, if the biblical text is going to say that evil exists, then evil is expected under the worldview. Now, you can say that this is inconsistent or like not probable given that God is benevolent. But at that point, we're just getting back to the issue of whether or not benevolence implies that God would allow evil. But to me, that just gets back to the original problem of the crucial premise.
Right? When we have to distinguish between is predicted from the worldview, what is expected from the worldview, and is acknowledged by the worldview. For example, if the Bible says at some point that Rome exists, I mean, does it mean that I can say, okay, that Rome exists was expected from Christianity or something like that, was predicted by Christianity? I mean,
Yeah, because
no.
when you're looking at what is predicted by a worldview, you would have to look at what that worldview says and then see what it entails. And if the Bible entails that evil is going to exist in the world, then it follows that evil would be expected. Because I don't really see how else you would discern what is expected under a worldview in this type of argument.
I mean, what I would say, in my view, the Bible acknowledges that evil exists, but fails to provide a good answer to that. And they believe in God despite the problem of evil. Why? Well, because the same reason that most people in history do, because they don't find it strong enough of a reason to stop believing in God, right? But that's not the same. Acknowledging the problem of evil is not the same as responding to the problem of evil. They still
Well,
haven't quite explained why did God allow this.
Well, they don't have to respond to it because the entire point of this was that you're saying that evil isn't expected, right? Now, responding to the problem of evil is a different question to asking, does the Bible predict that there will be evil? Because that's a completely different question from asking, does the Bible directly address the problem of evil?
I don't think the Bible predicted evil. The Bible acknowledges evil. Right? I don't see like it really
Okay,
like the Bible predicted evil. No, of course not.
what's the difference? Because when you say the Bible doesn't predict that evil exists, when we're doing like a Bayesian type argument, right? And we're saying this worldview predicts X. We're just saying that this worldview, if it's true, then X exists, right? You would define prediction that way in this context, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if at some point uh, you're blurring the distinctions between taking a data and having predicted that data. I mean, why didn't the Bible predict evil? Because evil existed before the Bible did, right? So it's not like, I mean, what I'm saying is if you begin from the basic posits of Christianity that an omnibenevolent God exists, you don't predict evil from that, right?
Mm. Well, first of all, the issue is that we're evaluating Christianity as a whole. And so we would have to evaluate like theism plus this moral framework that includes what Christians believe. So, like, I don't see why you would just include like just the statement that God exists. Because I think the statement God exists, like, sure, you can make predictions off of that, but I don't think you can make like any substantial ones because when you just say God exists without giving any further information about like moral frameworks, you can't really make any like deductions as to what God is going to do given his goodness. Like suppose I'm a moral anti-realist and I say God exists and that just goodness isn't real. Well, then I don't really know what God is going to do since I have no like objective standard of goodness, meaning that I have no way of using that objective standard to predict what God is going to do. Meaning that if you're saying that you know, does evil exist if God is real, where God is going to pick out the Christian God specifically? Then I think under that worldview, yes, evil is predicted.
Yeah, I mean, I will just get back to and just because the Bible is saying God exists, right? And the Bible is also saying evil exists, right? Like job or whatever. So, I mean, it doesn't mean, okay, now with that in mind, and the problem of evil is solved. There is no problem of evil. And if you point out that these two, there is an inconsistency there, is it enough to say, okay, but the Bible says both things. So in the Christian worldview, because the Bible says both things, then they're both incompatible. And bam, that's it, the problem is solved automatically. No need for theology or anything. That's like your argument.
Well, here's like, I'm not saying this alone defeats the problem of evil. I'm saying this. So you agreed that the probabilistic version of the problem of evil is going to depend upon saying that this is predicted under theism and then this is not predicted under theism, right? You agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're saying that a worldview predicts something, we're saying that like if a worldview entails X, then that worldview is going to predict X, right?
Yeah.
But then you already seem to agree that the Christian worldview entails that evil exists, right?
Right. But I'm saying that the Christian worldview is is having some inconsistency when doing
Okay.
this, right?
We can talk about that later, but just from now, if like you have that argument, like premise one, if a worldview entails X, then that worldview predicts X. Premise two, the Christian worldview entails that evil exists. So the conclusion follows that the Christian worldview predicts evil. And since the probabilistic argument from evil is going to be contingent upon the claim that what's it called? That like evil is not expected, meaning evil is not predicted under Christian theism, it follows that the problem of evil from a probabilistic view would be false. Now you can say that like evil is inconsistent with it, but that doesn't change the fact that evil is predicted.
I think I got lost there a little bit, right?
Here, I can hold on. I can here. I can do you how about this? What do you see what I've highlighted here in my notes? Or
Let me
wait, are you
see.
not seeing it right now?
Yeah, no, I have to
Oh,
make it big.
okay.
If a
Let's say
worldview
this.
entails, what do we mean by entail, right? Yeah,
So something like
yeah, I
let's say you
know.
have a statement P therefore Q, right? So in that statement, P is gonna entail Q.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. No, if the whole Christian worldview, right? I'm not sure you're taking something that is trivial, like okay, the Bible speaks about, I don't know, in the Bible says there are trees, right? Because there's one verse in the Bible that's talk about the trees. Okay, therefore the Christian worldview entails that there are trees. Therefore the Christian worldview predicts trees. I'm not sure if that's right to say. Okay, the Christian worldview predicts. No, I guess it does
I
because
think
the
you're
Bible
getting
says.
I think you're getting hung up on like the word predict. Like we can change it.
Yeah,
So
okay.
for example, then
No,
that
I think it's
worldview
fine. I think
expects
it's fine. I think
like
no, it's fine. Yeah, no. Yeah, if the
so
Bible says
let's
there
say
are
we
I
trees.
change
get
it
it.
to
No, yeah.
what
If the
happened?
Bible says there are trees, we should expect trees. Maybe it's fine. Maybe that's fine. Yeah,
Huh?
okay.
Yeah, but to finish, like let's say we change it to expects, right? So like a probabilistic one is just going to be the like if X is predicted under Y, then like X can serve as like evidence for Y. Likewise, if X is not predicted under Y, then X's existence serves as evidence against Y. So the probabilistic argument, what I'm trying to say is that it's saying that evil is not expected if Christianity is true. But I'm saying
No.
that Christianity being true entails that evil exists. And so because it entails that evil exists, the Christian worldview, like one of the expectations of the Christian worldview is that evil exists. And so that's why I'm saying there's a problem with the probabilistic argument from evil.
Yeah, okay. But what I'm saying is that the two things that were entailed by Christianity, they are somehow inconsistent. So let me just give you an example. Say we have a book, right? A book says the guy was a very good pilot, right? The guy is a great pilot. He never makes any mistake. And then the book later says, okay, this guy crashed the plane. Now, of course, both things are expected. So you can say, yeah, we expect from this worldview that he crashed the plane because the book says he crashed the plane. But I could still point out and say you, okay, but there is some inconsistency here. When he said that the guy was a very good pilot, then he was wrong, right? I can still point out the inconsistency, even if both things are somehow entailed by the worldview, right?
Yeah, so I would say that both things are expected. It's just that there's a contradiction, which is kind of my point, right? Because when you go look at the probabilistic argument, you're eventually going to get to the point of saying, hey, both things might be expected, which is why there's a contradiction. And
Yeah.
so my point is that your argument seems to be contingent upon the claim that like benevolence somehow entails that evil would be stopped. And my entire point was that I don't think that's necessarily the case in the way that you're explicating it.
Okay, why not? Why wouldn't an omnivolent being stop evil or prevent suffering? That this get us to maybe finally get to the theodicy. Do
Okay,
you
okay.
think we need a
So I think the issue then is with who has the burden of proof. Because if we look at, like, for example, if we look at your like initial argument, in your second premise, you said that benevolence entails that certain things, right? So I think that since it's your premise, the burden of proof falls upon you to justify that premise and to give like a substantiation explaining why it's true. Like that burden wouldn't fall upon me.
Yeah, I think I will just simply say that's the straight. You can look into any dictionary. Are you really disputing that a benevolent being will be likely, will be normally expected to prevent suffering? I mean, if you tell me, okay, I don't expect him to absolutely logically eliminate all suffering, maybe, okay, but you need that he will eliminate or prevent unnecessary suffering. Do you think that comes straightforward from the definition of benevolent?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you are kind of question begging with this because you're kind of just saying that, like, well, like I think the definition of the word benevolent entails my position, but that's kind of like the entire dispute. The entire dispute is whether or not benevolence actually entails your position. And secondly, I think it would depend on what you're defining unnecessary suffering as. But I mean, like once again, I think this whole like contention about like whether or not like I'm adhering to the typical usage of the word of like benevolence. I think this once again just goes back to like how would we
One
get
minute.
definitions? Or okay, 1 minute. Okay, so I think this goes back to how we use definitions, right? Because I explained how we would get the definition of like let's say benevolence, right? And I think that you're gonna need to go through that process. It's not just you have to cite a dictionary. I think you have to like go through the process of abstracting from like a particular to the universal in order for you to say that hey, goodness actually entails that God would stop all evil. But just citing a dictionary doesn't really do much.
It seems like what you are saying is like, okay, no, you actually have to go to the dictionary where it says benevolent, and you have to logically show and prove that benevolence entails normally entails not allowing suffering, right? And I'm like, really? This like, are you disputing that? That's like obvious to me.
Well, my point is more so that like you since like saying that benevolence entails X or Y, that's gonna be like a moral claim. And so I kind of like I need a justification for your moral claims, basically. That's kind of my point.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let
again,
Modern respond to this, and then that will be the end of the open discussion.
Okay.
I think I need to provide a moral justification for why suffering is bad before I say that. I think as long as we both agree to that, then I don't have to do it. And if normally trying to dispute that is like, it sounds very weird to me. Okay, that's all.
All right. So that's the end of the open discussion. We're going to open it up for Q&A here. So to open up for Q&A, you're just going to simply request to be a host, and then I will admit you, and then I'll try to do this on who is first. I think we have Apollos up, wanting to go first, so I'll bring him up, and we'll start the Q&A discussion.
Can you guys hear me just fine?
Yep.
All right, folks. I really enjoyed the discussion, modern atheism, external, modern. By the way, if you happen to know like a non-mythicist who's willing to debate a Jesus apocalypticism, I'd definitely like to do that on the IP Discord one of these
Debate,
days. But
debate what?
yeah, don't. Oh, I'll talk to you later about it. But
Okay, okay.
my actual question is, so I'll start off with some background by pointing out the trolley problem. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically like, would you flick a lever to kill one man if to switch to the tracks of a train to kill one man? if it was already destined to another destination that would kill 5 people. And it's interesting because when you look at like trolley-like problem, like lesser two evil, like experiments, we observe that the more personally involved you are, depending on how the problem is formulated, then the less likely people are willing to engage in that sort of like killing one person to save 5 people's lives sort of act. So say for example, like pushing a fat man off the bridge to stop the train, where you're actually pushing someone off a bridge. Or there have been even cases where like people actually simulated like a situation where people thought they were in a trolley-like problem, and all of a sudden they aren't willing to split the switch, and most people are willing to just not do anything and remain inactive. So my question is basically this, and it falls more along the lines of like a defense instead of like a specific theodicy. Defense just being the possibility for why evil and God can coexist, as opposed to an actual justification. If it is the case that lack of activity doesn't entail injustification, couldn't we apply the same thing to God? And if that's the case, that God is not actively involved in causing these diseases, then wouldn't it also be possible that God could have a reason for not acting actively in that situation? And that's for both of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think even if God wasn't actively causing the diseases, anyone could still make the case, okay, but God can stop those diseases. He can perfectly do that, like without nothing, or he could have set up the human body in such a way that this didn't happen. I think one could still make that case, and in that case, God will still be like morally blameworthy in a way. Yeah, I forgot what was the question. What was the other question? I don't know. Like,
Basically, I was just trying to say again. Yeah, I was just basically trying to say like, if it is the case that inactivity can actually be a good thing, like not stepping into a certain situation could be a good thing, then could we also apply the same thing to God?
Okay, I see. Yeah. I think that's better. I think that's better than I don't want to throw punches at external here, but that is better to say, okay, maybe God has a reason for allowing this. It's much simpler than to try to mega shift the burden of proof and say, no, you have to show me why a benevolent being doesn't like.
Zameron,
Okay.
am I allowed to clarify, by the way? Like,
Yeah.
even
Okay.
if the
So
question
okay,
is...
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, the question is for both of you.
Okay.
But were you? I know you spoke for like a minute just a while ago. Did you hear everything?
I just wanted to respond to one thing, because I do think I said that there is a reason and that I don't see an issue with there being a reason. It's just that I don't think that we have to necessarily know that.
Okay.
Like there's a difference between us knowing the reason and us knowing that the reason exists.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. No, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that in these questions part. But okay, let me just say to that. I think you will have. I think if you tell me maybe God allows this, maybe God has a reason for allowing this thing, I would say sure, maybe that's good. But I think you have to tell me what is the reason, because I will tell you I cannot possibly imagine what. It just seems too strange to me. It's like it will be like some guy is beating his wife and somebody like, oh wait, hold on, maybe he has a reason for doing that. I'm like, no, I think it's not. I think you will have to posit what is that reason. It's not enough to say God may have a reason.
And then I'll just
wait.
afterlife, soul making the Odyssey and defeat condition. Maybe I'm just joking, but good debate, guys.
Zameron, how much am I allowed to respond? Because like, do we want like, because if I respond and then Modern responds, it might make it so that we just get like an open discussion.
Yeah. I'll allow you to respond. I'll allow you to respond here, and then we'll move to the next question.
Okay. So my response is going to be that in that case, we wouldn't have epistemic justification for saying that like the person has a reason for allowing like the woman to get beat. but with theism, right, I would say that the arguments for theism are such that like we can have justification for knowing that God has reasons even if we don't know them. So I would say that the arguments for theism would be also arguments that God has a reason, but I'll leave it at that.
Right. All right, we'll move to the next question. I think Than joined the stage.
And yeah,
Yeah,
what's up,
you
man?
don't. I'm not the next person. I just can't request since it's my server.
Okay. All right.
So whenever it's technically my turn, just let me know.
All right.
I think Ryan or Clueless.
Yeah,
is the
Ryan was
one that-
next.
Okay.
I think he was here
Yeah,
first.
Ryan, Clueless, and then True Blue Hill.
Okay.
I wish Bem was here so Bem could also ask some like questions from the atheist side. I think that would be good.
Yeah. Bem was here, but I guess he left. All right.
Is Fallen still here? If Fallen is here, maybe he could answer a question, ask a question from the atheist side.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll bring up Ryan here. And all right, Ryan, you are free to ask a question.
Yo, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, I got a question for both external and modern atheism. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So for external, if God is real, why am I?
You cut out. You cut out.
Sorry about that. If God is real, why am I balding at 23?
That's a good question, man. It's a good question.
It's because you're too attractive, and so
Yeah,
God had to nerf you.
Yeah, dude.
Dang, that's tragic.
Yeah,
You got it
bro.
out for me.
It might be over, gang. It might be over. I don't know.
What's the
bro.
actual reason though?
Shit, man, that's a good question, bro. Honestly, I think me and Than are gonna become atheists after that question.
Yeah.
You
it
can
would
VC
just be like,
about
no
that if
answer?
you want to after the fact.
if that's like meant to be a serious question, I can answer, but I thought it wasn't.
Okay, so I guess there's no real answer to it. Okay. All right, gotcha. So I guess my other question for modern atheism is this. So under the secular moral paradigm, is it morally permissible to
What's the question? Wait, what's the question?
Is it?
The question can't be too funny. The question can't be that funny, bro. Like, what is it?
Hold on. Okay. Okay. Is it morally permissible to engage in the practice of thug shaking?
Oh my goodness.
Is that practice or practice of what?
Thug shaking. You know what thug shaking is?
No, but it sounds like a funny thing.
Yeah, so thug shaking is it's like where you raise your hands up in the air and vigorously shake your posterior whilst wearing inner city apparel. And so like this kind of thing is oftentimes done when your posse is chanting thug shake in a rhythmic manner in accordance to the speed of shaking your posterior. This practice is most popular with traditionally Ebonic subcultures in the United States.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. That sounds fine, but not if Tan does it. That's what I would say. It wouldn't be morally.
I thought it was going to be a serious question at first when he was like,
if he wants an answer to like the balding thing, if he actually wants an answer to the balding thing,
yeah,
Yeah.
balding
it would
us.
just be like,
I think it was a troll, but okay, we'll bring up Clueless.
I have a bit of a balding problem. also.
wait,
That's very sad.
can we rest on the fact that modern atheism said thug shaking is morally permissible?
Yeah, I mean, hey, atheism's cooked. Okay. All right.
So-
Clueless.
Yeah, so I got like a clarifying question followed up with the other question. So the clarifying question, modern atheism, is were you suggesting that this was an internal or an external critique? Or were you just doing like some holistic paradigm?
I think on the way it's made, it sounds like an internal critique to me because you're saying, no, wait. I'm not sure, I don't even know, because I think, okay, you are saying is like, from what you're positing, this attribute of God of being maximally benevolent, right? one would expect not to be suffering. I think it can work as an external critic kind of thing to keep things general. Like, okay, one would generally expect a benevolent God to not want to not desire suffering. I don't know. This is correct, right?
Oh,
I don't know.
okay.
Is it important? Yeah.
So what you're saying is you think it's an internal because you would just be positing what you believe theists would assume to be like some sort of definition as an omnibenevolent being, and you think there are certain characteristics of an omnibenevolent being that would be, I guess, like assumed, such as desire to not want suffering.
Yeah. I think that will be in conflict with the extent of suffering that we see in the world. So it's not like an internal contradictions between two things posited by Christianity. It's more like a conflict with one thing posited by Christianity and the state of affairs in the world.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I guess the question after that clarification is, um, so why wouldn't your view just fall under the axiological expectation mismatch problem?
Oh my God. Axiological expectation mismatch problem. What does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, basically, it's the problem that arises based on like discrepancies between what someone would expect from a moral standpoint and what's like observed in reality. And of course, this is typically going to be in continuity with what's assumed in theism, with like the expectations of evil. So basically, it's going to ask, why is it the case that you assume some specific value to what you're applying, whatever it may be, in your meta-ethical framework to the attributes of God versus what we may see in reality, or what it's at least expected or understood under our paradigm? It seems like you're applying a separate axiological commitment or just any theory of value that's going to be antithetical to like what the theistic value would be in terms of like how we would define um, an omnibenevolent being.
Okay. Honestly, that just went over my head a little bit. And I'm like, okay, why this God may be so dumb, right? That's further proof that that he doesn't exist. No, I don't. What do you mean by value? I'm assuming value, or I don't know. I don't really get what is the objection there. Sorry, a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Um. So, do you know what axiology is? Like,
Oh no, not really.
okay. Yeah. I'll just tell you, it's just the study or theories of value and and such. But we can just move on to other people who have questions. So I'm not taking up
Okay,
too much time.
okay,
All right, all
okay.
right.
Maybe you can explain me later, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right, we'll bring up True Blue Hill now.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah.
Oh, cool. So, I mean, I guess this is more of a question for modern atheism, but at the same time, feel free to chip in for salesmen. I guess my question would be that definition of omnibenevolence, or in the case of a restructuring of ImagoLogos, if that makes sense. So, I guess I would ask, like, would it be like omnibenevolent to allow for some measure of suffering to exist in order for have the optimal version of virtues? So, for example, like, would it not be like benevolent or some kind of measure of benevolence to allow your child, for example, to have um, like to I guess forgive me, I'm just trying to gather my words. Um, like for example, like when you're like for character building, for example, like, would it not be the optimal way of developing a person's character? Like for example, when they're solving a puzzle or when they, have some kind of, or when they pretty much do some kind of exercise. Like, would it not be like, I guess, in a way of benevolence to sort of um, have allow some measure of suffering in order to have the highest value of virtues? I guess that's something that I just directed for modern atheism, but feel free to pitch in. Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, your mic sounds real bad, but I think I got enough of there. So you're basically appealing to the soul building theodicy, right? That omnivolence can allow,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
they can allow. Sure. No, I think in principle, one could say logically, yes, this is consistent.
Sorry, can you say it again? Hello.
That sounds like,
Is that my? Is that? I didn't catch that. Sorry. Can you say that again?
You cut out for like the last 5 seconds, Modern.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's my mic as well. No, I think I would say in principle, yes, that omnibenevolence is logically consistent with God wanting to allow some degree of suffering if this is necessary for a greater good. For example, building our moral character, and I think this will have been.
Yeah. I didn't. Hello.
Okay. Hello. I
Is that
didn't get
me?
any of that.
Yeah. No. I didn't say anything. Is that me or is that? Sorry.
No, it was Modern too. You cut out like right after moral character.
I think that I would say that's fine. Am I cutting out as well? I think I wish this debate had been, as we had talked about this in the debate, also some of the theodicies like free will defense or the soul building defense. That would have been, I think, very interesting, but it's fine. I mean, you can argue however you want, right? Yeah, I think logically, yeah, it is possible that an omnibenevolent being allows certain things for certain.
No. Okay. Yeah, that's most of my question. I can stand down now.
All right.
Yeah, you can kick me. I'm not
Yeah,
familiar with.
I'm trying to find the right button here. Dude, I think I have to go here. Move to audience. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Than, you're up now.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll ask both people a question. I'll start with Modern. Okay, so Modern, I think there's a conflation happening, and it just kind of arose again in that last exchange. Because it seems like what you're doing is you're baking in your axiology into your definition of omnibenevolence. Rather than saying omnibenevolence is just defined as some sort of like actions that are going to be good or bad, right? And then you define what those actions are. It seems like the non-question begging way to define omnibenevolence is going to be something like, if God is omnibenevolent, right? He's going to just pursue the best kinds of actions. And then that's a definition that leaves open a following question, which is, what are the best kinds of actions? And that question is going to be answered by a particular axiology. So rather than going about it the way that you kind of were insisting in this debate, and then even in that last exchange, this is a way to kind of go about things without question begging. Because, well, I'll pause there really quickly and see what your thoughts are there.
Yeah. And here is why I don't think I have to do that. I don't think I have to prove this. This like you try to shift the burden of the proof.
I'm gonna. Sorry to cut you off. I'm gonna stop you right there because I'm not shifting the burden of proof. This is purely a semantic and modeling dispute here, because I'm not saying you have the burden of proof of providing an axiological theory here. This first step of my complaint is you are literally question begging if you're defining omnibenevolence in concordance with your axiology. So it's like, yeah, of course, you don't have a burden of proof if you just take as axiomatic that your axiology is true, right? But a non-question begging way to define omnibenevolence would be to leave open the category of axiology within it.
Right, and then you will ask me, okay, but what is good? And then you will say, no, but in my worldview, good is whatever God does. So there is no problem or evil. And I'm like, how can anyone think that this
Well,
is
that yeah,
I mean, you think,
hence the whole internal critique aspect, right? And at that point, that's the external critique is going to be okay. Well, you're you can say conditional on a particular axiology. Um, the probabilistic problem of evil can run this way.
let me just say, I don't think I have to justify my particular axiology as long as having children suffer for no good reason is bad on both of axiologies. And I will be, are you disputing that
Well,
having children suffer for no reason is bad? Because if that, then it's like, okay, you're gonna look real bad, you know. As long as we both agree on that, then you have to
no,
explain why
yeah,
it's not allowed.
I don't know of any Christian that's going to deny that children suffering is bad.
Oh, yeah, so somebody,
What's going to be denied is whether or not God is
no,
justified, right, in
external is going
permitting
to
that.
deny external is going to deny that is bad on the grounds that when God does it, it is not bad. And the reason
Wait,
for
wait,
that
wait,
is
wait,
that
wait, wait.
because good is something else, that bad is something else, right? That's what
Hold
I
on, to
think, that's the way I
clarify.
see it.
To clarify, since it's my position's being talked about, I said that the suffering was bad. It's just that there's no like obligation for God to like stop it immediately. Like obviously with us, we actually do believe that God does stop it. It's just that we don't say it in the way that you would say it, if you get what I mean. Like I unfortunately we didn't really get to this, but I did actually have what's it called? Like a whole like slide on this on how we actually do think. Like I'm displaying it right now, obviously. Like we do actually think that God does stop evil, but we just don't affirm it in like the same sense that you would want to. So I would just like to clarify my position there.
Yeah, okay. So it's not whether you're not denying that suffering is bad for us. You are denying that allowing suffering is a bad thing when God does it. But here's the thing: if you were going to appeal to a theodicy, that would be fine. But you are denying it on the grounds that
Well,
the
no,
definition of good is whatever God does, right? So that's
well,
weird.
yeah,
Sounds really bad.
that. By the way, Zameron, if there's other people
Yeah.
online waiting, just tell me to stop being annoying. Um, Yeah, so the problem is here that you're still question begging for a particular axiology, right? Because you keep on saying unnecessary suffering. However, if somebody, I think it was Apollos that brought it up briefly, right? Like somebody could hold to the fee condition and say that God's going to be justified in permitting suffering so long as it's defeasible. So that way, like any particular event is permissible on on God's behalf, so long as it's not the type of event that makes it impossible for an agent to have a life they would consider on the whole worth living. Um, Hence, again,
Yeah.
why I'm saying you're question begging by the way you're defining benevolence.
No, I'm assuming that we both understand the same thing by benevolent, like normally, right?
Yeah, I just take benevolence to say, generally speaking, that God is going to pursue the best kinds of actions and not pursue any unjustified actions.
Yeah, but that will just merely, like you say, that merely brings up the question,
And
okay, what are the best kinds of actions?
yeah, I mean,
But
and so
yes,
like,
totally,
look,
yeah.
if your complaint is just, well, my argument doesn't work if I have to justify an axiology, then I mean, it just sounds like you're implicitly conceding that the problem of evil doesn't work.
I mean, I think the probabilistic, I mean, the logical one, I can consider it doesn't work, but I think I mean, just tell me, let me try to put it this way. Let's say you are a pastor and somebody in your church is asking you, okay, why does God allow this? Don't you think that you need to kind of give some reason? God has a reason for this instead of
I have.
saying,
I've
yeah, yeah.
stood. I mean, look, if you want to bring up that kind of a scenario, I mean, I've stood in front of churches, in Christians where the mothers in the congregation had to put up with a mass shooting, and I've spoken to parents whose children were harmed and killed from a mass shooting. So yeah, I mean, look, I have a theodicy and all that stuff, right? But this isn't a pastoral setting. This is a philosophical debate, and you have you you have to give an account for what you're trying to argue, right? Your theistic predictions don't actually pan out without the axiology.
Yeah. So this
So
is a philosophical, okay. Uh, It's a philosophical debate, but we are not debating the logical problem of evil. We are just debating the weaker evidential problem of evil. What when you're telling me about when you explain to these people why did God allow that, I think what you're going to give some reason for that, right? How this leads to a greater good. What you're not going to do
Right.
is you're going to say, see, okay, God, for God,
But
when applied to God, the word good means something else. So he actually did something good.
yes,
That's when you're not going to do that.
yes. But and again, though, the theodicy, that whether or not a theodicy is successful is going to be conditional on the haxiology again, right? Because the theodicy is just going to be some sort of a story that makes sense of the suffering in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I've been up here for a while, so I had a question for Air
Um,
Purifier, because I just saw somebody else put a hand
wait,
up.
no, I think it's fine if you take your time, like on this part, because I think it is good to get all your thoughts out here. But yeah, go
Well,
on.
I mean, you guys can just read my book when it's out.
Okay, bro.
And somebody, like, I don't want to, I don't want to,
Oh
I don't want
shit,
to
like
hog
it's
up all this.
Weird flex, but okay.
Come on now.
Um,
Thank you know, this is our turn to shameless plug on
Look
your
at
server.
Purifier. Look, you guys, Purifier's running from me. He's terrified. Just kidding. No, actually, on the note of theodicy, that's what I wanted to ask Purifier about. So, are you a skeptical theist, or did you not give a theodicy just because for any other particular reason?
I should probably explain the context of the debate then, because I don't know if you were there for that part, but basically, I did like
No.
a debate where this was like a year ago. So the solution I gave right now is kind of like a better version of what I had a year ago, and then like I made it into a YouTube video, this solution, which low-key I'm a shameless plug it right now. Actually, I think I did it already, so I won't do that again. But basically, then modern atheism like commented on the video or on one of the videos saying that, hey, I disagree with this because XYZ. We can like debate the argument and so forth, right? And then like he contacted me to debate this argument. And so since I didn't really like, the main point of my argument was that we can solve the problem of evil without a theodicy, that like you know, I might as well like just,
Uh,
yeah, see what I
okay.
mean? Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah,
I
actually, so in that sense, I do agree with you in the minimal way, and all I mean there is, if you adopt the defeat condition, um, i- what modern atheism, or what most atheists would define as gratuitous suffering, actually falls within the boundary conditions of theistic expectation. So therefore, there's no actual disconfirmation. And then theism relative to atheism, the posterior probability still comes out on top. Is that what you're trying to?
Uh, yeah, I would say kind of, but I don't really use like I didn't really use probabilistic language until like the later
Yeah,
parts
I mean,
of.
like, I'm just kind of stroking myself right now while I'm saying, because I
Okay,
just.
bro. Aye, bro. Aye, bro. That was not the wind, gang. That was not the wind.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm gonna shut up now, so other people can get in.
all right.
Well, to
With
answer your question though, okay. I was gonna answer saying that I am a skeptical theist in many senses. I would say that like I'm very, very favorable to skeptical theism.
Yeah, I mean, oh man. Okay, I'll say this, and then you should let up follower Paul up so he can
I
do his
mean, I think
question.
follower of Paul is fine if you like stay up. I don't think he has
I'm
anything
just gonna
else.
mute. I'm just gonna mute.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, I guess, like, my theodicy, you could even. I don't even know if you're truly familiar with my theodicy or not, but my theodicy is like actually a form of skeptical theism. Um, but we can elaborate there after it's all done.
Yeah, this guy's gatekeeping his arguments, bro. Ain't no way.
yeah, probably wants you to buy the book.
Yeah, he's
No, I just don't want to hog all the time. That's all.
no, I think, guys,
All
I think
right.
this confirms that Fan is running from giving his theodicy.
Yeah, so okay. We have a question from the chat. I think it was from Coffee Man or something like that, or Coffee Machine. It is, Dear Air Purifier Salesman, I do comprehend that the definition of benevolence applied to God follows a different dynamic of definition due to the drastically different existential and elemental nature of the entity in question, God, and that the way we run in the inspection of the deity is different from how we recognize the characteristics of contingent non-elemental beings like animals and humans. But what is the relationship between God and our suffering? If he doesn't act, wouldn't that imply that he is indifferent towards our suffering as conscious entities?
So I actually do have like a couple of slides for that because I did prepare for that, but unfortunately we didn't get there. But so when we do actually say there is a relation between God and ending suffering, that being that we do think that God does act to end suffering, and we do say he has a desire to like end evil, right? But when we say God has a desire to do this, whenever we speak about God having desires in general, we're going to say this analogically, not properly. And that's typically going to refer to how there's certain effects that are the product of like God's essence that occur in the world because of that like property, right? So for example, when we say God is angry due to murder, the predicate anger is applied analogically to just describe how murder is like a moral sin, right? And so when we say God desires the end of evil, that desire is predicated analogically, and all it just means is that God causes something to end evil. And in this case, we would just say that it ends that it happens basically in the end time. So this kind of gets into Than's theodicy with like the defeat condition and everything, where at the like in our eschatology, God does defeat evil completely. And so the result of that is that God does have a relation to ending suffering. That being, he does it. It's just that in our paradigm, right, in our moral framework, that ending of evil only happens after a certain amount of time. So, I wish he was on the panel though, so he could like like clarify if he meant something else. Also, Zameron just like dipped. You know where he went?
Yeah, I took over for him. Yeah, it does sound like that was it. So I'll have to follow up, Paul up to ask a question.
I'll see if I have anything else on that in the meantime.
Hello, hello, hello. What's up, boys and girls? Good debate
Hello.
at start. I just have a simple question for modern atheists. If you can provide us what evidence you are using for the problem of evil, that would be very nice, so we can make sure we are still manning your position perfectly.
What evidence I'm using for the problem of evil?
Yes,
If
please.
I'm appealing to the suffering that we see in the world, like stuff like genetic disease, but also like crime, and the fact that people suffer, right? I think this. I mean, is this a fact that requires evidence to defend? I think it's obviously not. I think everybody will agree to that. And if you begin disputing, you start disputing this. I mean, it's really, I think nobody's going to dispute that. It's relatively uncontroversial, right? So I don't need evidence to make this claim.
Okay, that's all I have to ask.
Okay, thanks.
Also, I did find something else that I did have prepared for in response to the earlier question. Clueless, do you mind if I just like go over it or?
Yeah, you can go over it.
Okay. Like one other thing is that I think one thing that this person was trying to get at was that like there's a difference in role, and that's why we would have to evaluate it correctly. And I think this also gets at the earlier points in the debate where we were talking about like how you know it would be strange if like there was someone who was able to prevent suffering, but then he just didn't, and we would condemn that. So then why wouldn't we do the same to God? And for us, the response is going to be that a difference in like ontology can lead to a difference in terms of like moral imperatives. So, like for example, right, prima facie, it is wrong for someone to cut someone's skin open, right? However, if someone, let's say, is a doctor or like a surgeon, they no longer have that moral like obligation, right? They don't have the obligation to not cut someone's skin open as long as they're a doctor like performing a surgery, for example. So difference in role and difference in knowledge can lead to a difference in moral obligation. And so I think I would definitely agree with what he said there.
All right, yeah. Let's see who else wants to come up. It looks like Old Irons. Okay, there we go.
Hello.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I have a question for modern atheism. So my question is, like, with the advantages that theism has in explanatory power, like leading up to the problem of evil, like what exactly, like given the fact that from my understanding you don't think there's a logical contradiction between theism and evil, the problem of evil, you just kind of think that it's like more likely under atheism. Like what exactly about that do you think is enough to like shift the posterior probability in atheism's favor?
Yeah, no,
That's for me. Oh, is that for both
No,
of us, or
that was. I mean, yeah, that could be for both of you guys.
I'll let Modern answer first.
will count as enough proof to disprove theism. I don't think is that strong, right? The probabilistic argument for evil just tell us that it's unlikely that a benevolent God will create this state of affairs. But how unlikely? I don't know. That's open. That's an open question, and it depends a lot of your moral intuitions. How likely so let's say you have to think. I think you have to go for any theodicy. You have to say, okay, maybe God has a reason for it. Now you have to ask yourself the question: how likely is that He will have a good reason for it? Right? So if you think maybe I don't think it's that strong, right? I mean, it will be like or evil combined with any other arguments combined with. You also have to say that the arguments for God are weak. I don't think so. I don't think the problem of evil is so strong that it really like was a lot of work justifying atheism. I'm not sure that is that strong, right?
Okay.
No, that's all.
Right.
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it.
All right.
I'm so happy Iron is here. I love him.
Oh, did you want me to bring? I just moved him to the audience. Unless you want him back.
Oh, he heard me. That's all that matters.
Okay, yeah, Iron is pretty sexy, so that makes. All right, next one looks like is ImagoLogos. Oh, did he take it away? Hold on.
He has to accept the request.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And now he's up.
Okay. You're muted, by the way.
Y'all are crazy in the chat. Jeez, man.
There you go, Emo. You're muted, by the way, if you're trying to speak. Okay. There you go. We can't hear you if you're trying to speak. If you're having mic troubles, just feel free to text your question in the chat and I'll read it out. Yeah. Just text it. Just text it in the side chat. I'll read it out. Whoever you want to ask a question to.
See, God should have fixed your mic, right? Your mic. that proves that God isn't all good. You know, He let your mic be broken.
I don't know. Raindrop, do I want to let you up, bro? So I'm seeing people tell you to come up here and spit something. I don't know. We expect you to rap. Let's see.
They said, "Don't let me come in here. I'm rapping and trapping and making it happen. Trapping and whipping it, flipping it, whipping it, flipping it, keeping it. Trapping and rapping and rapping and lapping and fapping and rapping and rapping it."
This dude just
Fire.
flew fapping and rapping.
And bars is bars, bro.
Man.
All right. Whoa. All right. Did one dude type a question out? Let me see. He's still typing. Okay.
What could bro be typing? I wonder.
What's up, fellas?
Oh, it's Bustdown.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for both of you. Me and Cryptic were kind of wondering this.
Yeah, okay, bro.
Well, I have a question. Cryptic has one. So, if God is real, why did he limit the perks on Black Ops Zombies all the way up until Modern Zombies to only 4 perks? And why did he give me a ray gun outside the mystery box just now?
It's punishment, probably.
I mean, I'm not modern atheist, but that's definitely a narrative theodicy right there. That was just progression.
Yeah, bro. I think you're just bad at the game.
Nah.
I think it's because you secretly like modern.
I think this guy's bad at the game, bro.
So,
yeah, Bustdown.
I mean, then,
I'm gonna be real. As someone who's played games with you,
so could you say then God denied me of an unlimited perks after considering my race and sexuality then?
okay, bro. I don't think we can answer that one.
Wait, Bustdown, aren't you
It all
Lebanese?
depends, right? Because like race and sexuality isn't actually like a real category.
Interesting. Okay. I see.
Because my blue-haired professor told me so.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree. So
Except we can apply that category to Bustdown because he's Lebanese. So.
Yeah. Wait, Bustdown. I have a question for you since you have one for me.
What?
Why is your max bench lower than mine? Yeah, that's what I thought. You're my son.
Low-key cheated. Low-key cheated.
Yeah, you're my son,
cheated.
bro. Yo, can we kick Bustdown off the pedal? Kick Bustdown off the pedal.
I was taking
please.
steroids.
Kick Bustdown off the
Look,
pedal,
man.
bro.
Nah, we can't have the TRT steroid argument being used up here at Slender. All right, next question. Banny.
All right, so it's a question for you, Bustdown.
But he's
Oh, my God, Bustdown. Oh, yeah. Okay. I guess can I be able to answer?
You mean me?
Yeah, I'll ask you. All right, so I want to know what's your thoughts on Johannes Wiggers?
I think he was a very good exegete of didn't he write a bunch of like commentaries on the Summa in like Latin or something? I think he was a good exegete, you know.
All right, that's all I wanted to know.
All right, who else? Oh, nope, no one else. It looks like. All right. I guess that's all the questions. Oh, well, here we go. There we go.
What's up, guys? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what's up?
I just I don't think anybody gave enough love to modern atheism, and I don't know if you can still hear me, but I love you, man.
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, bro. Mad respect.
I love you so much, Modern. Keep doing what you're doing. Yep.
Yo, that was a you were
Yeah.
doing.
I really, really,
Modern.
really
I don't know if I would.
Modern.
I don't know if I would accept that.
Yeah, Loki
Like
fans.
that. Look, like Modern. I love you, bro, because you're my friend. But also, like, I wouldn't say it like that to you. You know what I'm saying, bro? Like,
Yeah, bro, that's kind of weird.
I don't
Modern,
know, bro. Like,
I love you. I love you.
Modern,
So much.
me das tu número, por favor, baby.
But also, like,
Hasta
I
luego.
might be kind of jealous because Pure's never talked to me like that. So
Yo, oh, Pure left, bro. Why'd y'all kick my son out, bro? You know Pure's my son.
no, I didn't do that. Hey, Sam.
what's up?
I love you, bro.
I love you.
Like, I
too.
love you.
I love you too, man.
Thank you. No, like, you don't get it. Like, I love you. Like, just like he said.
I choked on my candy.
I hope Bustdown isn't recording.
I hope he's recording that part too. Yeah. Can we clip Than? Like, remember when Than was talking about like how he was what was the word you used? You used the word stroking it, I believe.
I was just
hope we
stroking
got that
myself.
part. Yeah, we're gonna clip that part for sure.
Oh, that's totally fine, dude. Somebody made a IP out of context clip,
Oh no.
and they
We
just
have,
took all the out of pocket stuff that I say.
Yeah. We have
Like,
the
like when you say that maybe someone made up the Rising of the Saints, and someone told that to Matthew, and maybe Matthew wrote that, and that's how Matthew wrote that into to the gospel, right? I mean, I don't want to start something else here, but it's like, okay,
I'm not.
really?
I'm not taking the bait. Don't worry.
yeah, I'm not taking the bait either. You know, we have one soundboard clip on the ImagoLogos server where it's you saying, "Oh, you procreated with a woman? That's gay."
Yeah, that's on the IP out of context video.
All right. So I guess there's no more questions, so we can just wrap.
Are we
it up.
doing a poll? Are we doing a poll, by the way? Because I thought we were, but I don't know. Do you want to?
I'm sure someone can make one. Here.
Well, I mean, if it's in announcements, it might be a little better. Yo,
No, it
low-key,
should be people that
I think
are
Ray.
actually
I think
watching
Ray
this
Z
show.
should. I think Ray Z should request up and ask a question. Also, Ryan is requesting up. Same with Raindrop. You should let them both up. I want to see what they have to say.
I don't know. I already let Raindrop up. I don't want to listen to his next album introduction.
Maybe let Ryan up. Maybe let Ryan up.
There, I made the poll.
Yo, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I just kind of have a clarifying question because modern atheism said that that thug shaking was permissible. So I have a more probing question. So if thug shaking is a traditionally Ebonic practice, can an Egyptian ethically thug shake? Like, do you think there'd be any contention between an Egyptian thug shaking when it's just something that's traditionally Ebonic?
I think he might have fried his brain. He might not know the answer to that one.
Yeah, you might look into atheism with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what to say there. Yeah, maybe, sure.
Maybe that's really indecisive though. It's a yes or no question. Is it ethical?
Oh well, that depends on what you mean by ethical. So I think you have to prove that the word ethical is like you have to prove that the definition is correct. Then I can answer the question.
Well, I mean, the fact that you
What's a joke, by the way? I just
I guess
just
what is
doing
what is
what
I guess
external.
what is edifying? I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you're just kind of dodging the question. Is this
or
too
maybe you
difficult of
could,
a question? Like,
or
can
you could
an
maybe
Egyptian
posit the
ethically
definition,
thug
like
shake?
intrinsically worth
Yeah.
pursuing.
I just I just wanted to make a parody of what external says. It was a joke, so it's well like, okay, it depends on what you mean by ethical. You feel
Well, hold on.
That was
you have to prove that you have to prove that the axiological worldview you use to define the word ethical is valid first. You have to demonstrate that, and only then we can talk about what is, if something is ethical.
Okay, well, how do
like,
you define it? Like, I'm just going by your worldview. Like, I
Oh.
suppose you imagine, like, are there any ethics in your worldview?
Oh, that's a good. Okay, that's a good question. Let's assume. I think. Yeah. I think it actually. Yeah. I think they are morally. They are objectively true moral facts. Actually, that's what I think. And I think if something is moral, something is immoral if it hurts somebody for no good reason. And a good reason is like defending your life or your property or something like that. That's how I will define it. I think that's what
So
normal people
an
mean.
Egyptian can do cultural appropriation and can thug shake.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, will you thug shake?
If you pay me, yeah, sure.
Oh my goodness. Bustdown, clip that, bro.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right.
I mean, is there any point where we should never thug shake? That's the real question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, like, is there any time at all?
Yeah, maybe at church. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if you don't know, then do you really have any knowledge? Mr. Debater?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna let Bust.
Wait,
not
I just want to say one
Brandon.
last thing. I appreciate you guys. I just want
Yeah.
to say that before you let me off the stage.
Yeah, W. All right, we're gonna let Brandon up. He had a question.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. This is the question for both speakers. So with the problem of evil, how much would how much does that decrease the probability of theism being true? For the problem of evil for both of you guys.
Oh, that's a good question. Like, if I say too little, then at some point it's like, why you even running the argument, right? But I'll see how much that decrease. I think putting a number on it is difficult, right? I don't know. Like, yeah, it's so difficult to put a number on it.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't understand. I don't know what you what's your take on like other philosophical arguments for God's existence. But if you were to like take a holistic approach to it and look at the totality of like evidence for both God's existence and against, like what like would the problem, like how much would the problem of evil decrease the probability of Christian theism being true?
No, okay. No, Christian. Okay, that's a great question. No, no, to be honest, I have my these days. Some days I think maybe deism is true, right? Maybe God is not so unreasonable, but we have to separate theism and Christian theism. I think what the problem with Christian theism is basically like the Bible and all that. It's not even the problem of evil for me. So it's not even the problem. Is not what is my issue with Christian theism. But how much does? But I mean, I do think it does some work. But to be honest, like it's like any number I give you feels like pulled out of nowhere. I don't know what to say here. Yeah, don't you think? I think if a good God, but on the other hand, it feels so intuitive to me the idea that if a God had made us, it would be like who had made like a paradise for everyone. It seems to me like that's how a God, like a prima facie, is like a God would have made the world like this. Feels like that's true. I don't know what to tell you about a number.
Okay, no, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. What about you, Purifier.
So actually, for me, I would say that if we're evaluating Christian theism, I don't think that it would have a substantial impact on the probability at all. Um, depending on like what type of probabilistic argument you want to run, I actually think that it can increase the probability of Christian theism because like earlier in the debate we went over like how whenever you're making like a Bayesian or like probability based argument, you have to look at what like theories what the theories say and then what's expected. So like I said that like theism or specifically Christian theism predicts that there will be suffering agents, but atheism doesn't predict that. So in a way, you could argue that the existence of evil, can constitute as evidence for God. So I would say that either it doesn't have a substantial impact negatively, and it could possibly have a positive impact on the probability of Christian theism.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Looks like Emo, I assume, probably fixed his stuff. So let's see if he can speak. All right, so it looks like it's still not fixed.
People asking if they want me to talk shake or something. I will tell you this. I will agree to talk shake in video if Michael agrees to debate it on his channel.
You can't be saying all that, bro.
Right.
Wait, you'll hold on. Just to clarify, you'll thug shake if it's the case that IP accepts a debate challenge from you.
Yeah, Michael specifically. Yeah, in his channel.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I will.
And where would this hypothetical thug shake take place if it were the case that were to come into fruition?
I mean, outside, I guess, but you can request a place, right? Although I can do it in my room or something.
Like, are you saying like to record it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I will record it, or if you want me to do it live somehow, like before the debate or something, whatever you want. Right?
Yeah, look, we'd have to take that to like the higher ups.
It's not going to happen.
Imagine that. It was worth a try.
Anyways, yeah, Ryan, I'll let you up after OJ because he was requesting.
What do you guys are you guys just doing a Q&A the rest of the night?
Well, I actually it's 3:30 here, 3:30 a.m. So I cannot stay like super a lot, But I can say a bit.
I'm about to bounce because I'm prepping for a stream tomorrow. So
yeah, we'll probably just run through these two, and then if anyone wants to talk about it more, they can just go to another.
OJ's here. I'll stay for OJ's question, and then I'll.
All right. This is a question for modern atheism. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Modern atheism. Dracula, Darth Vader, The Godfather. Maybe God allows evil to exist because he just wants to watch sick movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
You can watch a movie without the characters in there being real, right?
Yeah.
You can watch a movie without the need for the characters inside the movie to be real, to be actually conscious, and experience those things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't understand your rebuttal.
No, I mean I don't know if this is half serious or not, but if you're telling me like Michael has this theories, he like the implication is that evil is like a movie with evil is like cooler to watch. He says that Lord of the Rings is more entertaining than Teletubbies,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But
Yeah.
my point
It's
is
a better story.
okay, he says that, yeah, he says people would prefer to live in the Lord of the Rings, but I'm like, okay, wait until an orc is actually stabbing you in the stomach with his sword, and then tell me that you actually wanted to live there. I think you're not really considering all the implications of what you say. Other than that, I mean, if the idea is, I think it has to be better than that, because if you're going to tell me, no, it's fun for God to watch us suffering, or it's entertaining for him, and I'm like, dude, that sounds really evil, right? That's a reason, but I don't think that's a good reason, because it has to be a better reason than that. I think. I don't know if that's what you're saying.
So you don't think the overcoming of evil makes the triumph? You don't think it just amplifies the triumph of good?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Maybe in some cases, right? Maybe in some cases, but I guess in principle it could be the case that you feel better afterwards. Maybe let's say you are in heaven and you see a life where you overcame hardship or difficulties or stuff like that, and you think, okay, that was cooler, right, than just having been born in a Teletubbies world, right?
Maybe not
But
just cooler, but also like
maybe
more effective, right?
effective at what?
Well, I just say like as far as like giving like it like meaning, right? So think of it like this: do you work out?
Uh, no, I can't. I have back problem. I had back operation last year, actually.
You and me both. Yeah, I have back issues too. All right. Well, I'm still gonna stick with the analogy. Like, imagine having like a six pack of abs. Like part of the reason why having a six pack is like really cool is because it's like really hard to get a six pack. Like you had to like suffer and triumph to get that six pack. If you just snapped your
Yeah.
fingers and everybody had a six pack, that would make having a six pack ultimately meaningless, right?
Wait, but how? Okay, I think the issue is the time it takes to get a six pack, right? I mean, the discomfort, there's a bit of discomfort when working out, but I think not everyone is willing to put in the time for it. I think it's the bottom line of this, right? I mean, I get your point, right?
Yeah, but isn't it the suffering though? It's not really like the time, because like the time is just something that kind of like passes by regardless. It's like the pain and suffering that goes into it that I think is the more, or else everyone would have a six pack, right? Because everybody has time, right? But not everybody can withstand
No,
the suffering to
not
get the six
everybody.
pack.
Yeah. No, okay. Let's not miss the point here. I don't think not everyone has time, but okay. I think I get what you're saying, right? I get what you're saying. Look, if there is something like that causes discomfort, right, somehow, or displeasure, and by putting myself through this, if I get a good thing and I get to show off, like how later I get how disciplined I am, right, or something like that. I mean, in that case, I guess maybe yes, sure. So I would say, yeah, maybe the discomfort of working out is okay. But I mean, if you take it to the actual world, okay, and I have to ask, okay, but why did that little girl, have to be born with such a terrible skin disease? Okay, that one, I think you cannot tell me, if she hadn't been born with that disease, then she wouldn't feel good about her life at the end or something like that. I just can't buy that, right?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I guess I could understand that. Like, I guess ultimately my point would be, don't you think that if there was an absence of evil, it would remove also a lots of
Yeah, okay. A lot of fun, maybe. Okay, I kind of see your point, really. Yeah, I think maybe yes. I almost have to say maybe. Almost have to agree that maybe yes, a world without any bad things or suffering in any form, maybe
right.
it will even be boring, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I don't know if
yeah.
you have Air, if you wanted to answer that question, if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah, that's basically it.
Like on the whole like narrative theodicy.
I mean, I didn't realize this was a theodicy. I was just kind of just thinking this that like,
Because
yeah, if we lived in a world without evil, like what kind of world would that look like? And is that a world that I necessarily would want to live in?
So I mean, a similar way you could frame it is by saying that an all good being would create the greatest possible world, and this would follow even if that greatest possible world had evil in it. And you can then argue that a world with suffering is like, or the greatest possible world has suffering, meaning that in order for God to create the greatest possible world, he would have to create one in which there's suffering. And since it's justified for like an all good being to create a world, even if suffering exists in that world, in the case that that world is the greatest possible world, it follows that suffering can coexist with God.
Yeah, exactly. Because any sort of movie without conflict is a really bad movie, right?
And then,
So,
so Alvin Plantinga also talks about this actually. He did like a lecture where he covers this, and instead of using like the whole movie thing, he says that the greatest possible world is one in which the Christian narrative is fulfilled. And I think that if you went that route, then I think maybe if you combined it with like the narrative theodicy stuff, that could make it stronger.
mhm. Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, sorry, I missed the debate, so I've only been on for like the past 15 minutes, but I appreciate you guys doing this. So, thanks again, Air, and thanks again, Modern Atheism, for kind of sticking your neck out like this and kind of dealing with Air and then all the trolling. But I think despite all the trolling, I think everyone appreciates you kind of throwing yourselves to the wolves a little bit.
Yeah, I think no, this was a lot of fun. I also learned some stuff.
I
I
liked
think
it.
that's a great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And if you want to do something again, just let us know, Air or Modern, and we'll set something else up for you guys. Appreciate it.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
We got one more question.
Yeah, then I guess we can close it out.
Yeah, I'll let him ask this guy ask real quick, and then we'll close out.
Because Ryan said it was a serious question this time, so.
Oh, was it Ryan who was asking? People were tagging me saying, this guy.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have two questions. One is for external, other is for modern atheism. So external, can you turn off your camera, on your camera, so I don't have to use hands to write anything?
Bro, I'm not turning on my camera.
Okay, noted. And then for modern atheism, what is your response to like there's evil, like evil is necessary so we can show virtue?
So we can what? Sorry. So we can what?
Show virtue other people.
I didn't. Sorry, I didn't hear that again. So we can do what?
So that evil is necessary so that we can show virtue to other people. So goodness to other people in the suffering.
Are you saying like altruism?
So we can be what? I don't get in the word. Sorry, I asked so many times. Do you get the word external?
No,
I was
not
meaning.
really.
Can you type it? Can you type it maybe so we can? So
Virtue.
So
Virtue.
Virtuos. Virtuos. Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah,
What
that's
is
a great.
your
I
like?
wanted. Yes. Yeah.
What is your response to like that? That there's evil is necessary that you can show virtue to other people.
Yes, that's great response. That is what I actually kind of prepare for. I wish we had talked a little bit about this, but okay, I had a great response to that. Let me give you a small speech. I see three problems with that. One, it is not clear that the only logically possible way to get a virtuous moral agent is to get them to endure suffering. For example, God made some angels and they are virtuous and they didn't wait. I think they didn't wait to a process of suffering. They were just created that way. They didn't become children, then adults. So this is logically possible to create virtues. Second, I think very important, that doesn't explain the distribution of suffering in the world. For example, we let's assume we live in the first world country like United States. We endure a certain degree of suffering. Now, if this degree of suffering is enough, is sufficient for us to become morally virtuous, and it follows that the people who endure an extreme amount of suffering, for example, the people starving in Africa or the people born with some genetic diseases. Now, that was excessive. They didn't need that to become morally virtuous, right? Because we can become morally virtuous in the United States. So they had an excessive amount of suffering, right? I think will be, yeah, I had another argument, but I want to make this super long. So that will be my two top responses.
So to the second part, you say, if I get this right, you say that because Africa has more like suffering, that means like there's no like we cannot show suffering because we live in United States. Is that right, or did I misheard you?
I mean, we have some small degree of suffering. It will be like we endure some suffering. Like sometimes we get sick a little bit, so sometimes we lose our jobs, we have money problems, we get sad. But what I'm saying is like a normal person in the United States, some most normal people, they don't endure the degree of suffering that somebody in Africa endured, for example, or a child born with a horrible genetic disease. Now that degree of suffering, that amount of suffering, it was not necessary for them to become virtuous, right? If we can become virtuous with the little suffering, then so can they. So why are the people with lots of suffering, right?
Okay. I just asked what is your response. But okay, I have nothing else.
All right. Well, thanks for that question. All right. All right, I guess we can go ahead and
Is that
close
it?
out. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, okay. Wait, Ryan, real quick. He said I was going to ask how you can get from perfection to imperfection. As in, how does that metaphysically work? I would say imperfection is created. Like, hold on.
It's
I
a
would
great
say
question.
imperfection is created. Like, I wouldn't say imperfection is intrinsic to perfection. Rather, it's created as something external. That's how I would respond to that.
No, Graham Oppy and Josh Rasmussen had a conversation on capturing Christianity on the contingency argument, and this was exactly the objection that Graham Oppy said, because Josh Rasmussen was saying that he can explain the data by positing a perfect being, and Graham Oppy is like, okay, but how do you get to imperfection in creation then? Right? It seems to me like it's a good point.
Man, I probably just need more context on like what specific, because like, well, I know Ryan is a Platonist, so I don't know how he would answer that. But like, from like our view, there's not really an issue with something perfect causing something that's less perfect than itself. I don't know how Platonists would answer that, but my guess
Yeah.
is that they would have a similar way, because for them, they have like the world of forms, and then there's the form of the good. But then everything underneath the form of the good is in some way contingent to the form of the good, but then it's also imperfect, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think Josh Rasmussen said something similar to that. He said like anything that the maximally perfect being will create will by definition be less perfect because it will be below him. It cannot be identical to him. So it will be always like imperfect. But I would say to that, I would actually object to that. Maybe it's like, but how do you get to things like with mistakes, literally with mistakes on it, literally with problems? Like there is a sense of perfection that is like not omnipotent, right? But it's a sense of where something has literally mistakes on it, like bad things.
You kind of cut out there. Would you like to just stop talking
Yeah.
about it?
I mean, I think there is a sense of imperfection, like a square that has some problem or some mistake, right? There is so it's like for a circle with some mistake, and he's like, okay, how can a perfect being create that circle with mistakes, right?
Oh, okay. Well, if it's from like that perspective, then imperfection itself isn't like a mistake in like a moral sense. Like, for example, right? Um, well, let's say that like, I don't know, bro, you like God creates like a baby, right? This baby isn't gonna be perfect, but if that's all you mean by that, then God creating an imperfection isn't really an issue, because creating an imperfection just would be morally neutral then. Like if I were to draw a square that's like slightly like, I don't know, bro, like what's it called? Like maybe like one of the lines is slanted. Like technically that's not a perfect square, but that's not like a moral sin that I've committed, when I do that. So I mean, I just wouldn't see any contradiction between like a perfect thing and an imperfect thing as a cause, as like an effect of it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. We can talk about this maybe some other day. It has some cool implications in the contingency argument.
I mean, I think you know that I wouldn't use like the Rasmussen style contingency argument.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I would usually just go with the typical like Thomistic proofs.
I don't know which. I'll have to look that up. I don't know what that is.
I'll usually, although honestly, like I will, whenever I'm arguing for theism, I'll usually like either do that or like just go straight to like gospel reliability. I find those arguments to be the best usually.
Yeah, you you say the gospel relativity and what else?
Just like the Thomistic arguments and like gospel
Oh, the 5
reliability.
ways. 5 ways, you mean?
5 ways is like one way you could do it, but there's obviously more than that. Said he. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, Lewis. I remember Alchemist really didn't like PSR.
I'm not hearing you. I didn't hear.
Oh no, because Clueless said something about the PSR, so I was just saying that like Alchemist didn't really like the PSR. I remember he had an argument like against it a while back.
No. Yeah. I don't know. Principal explanation just feels better. But yeah. Okay. I guess besides modern atheists, as you said, it's getting late over there. Everyone will probably move to another VC.
Yeah. I think we should wrap up. I'll probably join the ImagoLogos VC after this, I guess. And I don't know, like play Minecraft or something if anyone wants to join in.
Yep. All right.
I think I'm gonna go because it's almost 4 a.m. here, and I have to do something tomorrow. So yeah, but yeah, okay. Well, this was fun. Yeah, thank you very much for having me again. This was great.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice talking to you too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. All right.
And by the way, Bustdown, I guess stop the recording now.
I hope my end is fine. Not like